JP Morgan Chase and Company. A large audience. Women write on a glass wall. A man and women's faces. Team members raise their hands. Men hold a JP Morgan rainbow banner. People interact. Spinning class. A man smiles. Women high five. A man speaks in a large dining room.
Rising sun hits the sky. See it open before us. Take these hopes, hold them high. Every step takes you closer.
William Jaramillo, Adeline, Latino Hispanic Business Resource Group.
When I think about the importance of a BRG in an organization, it's absolutely one of the reasons I stay. When I start thinking about where I would be if it wasn't for Adelante, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in today. If it wasn't for the connections I've made along the way.
Keisha Slaughter, Bold, Black Organization for Leadership Development.
BRG stand for Business Resource Groups. It really gives you the opportunity to both develop yourself professionally, but also connect with other like-minded individuals.
Leslie Corridon, Women on the Move Interactive Network.
BRGs are an invaluable part of the culture of JP Morgan Chase.
Slaughter.
This place is a very large organization, but by being part of any BRG, it really makes it smaller, as well as finding mentors and mentees.
Wesley Damoro, Vets, Voices for Employees that Served.
BRGs are incredibly important to the firm in creating a culture that really ensures, our employees feel welcome.
Jill Jensen, Pride, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, plus Ally Resource Group.
It allows me to be my whole self and participate and know there is a large part of this organization that supports who I am.
Bill Vlachos, Accessibility, Disability, and Caregiver Resource Group.
It's really given me a lot of resources that otherwise I would have not been exposed to. You learn through the BRG through other parents who have kids with autism. Some of the benefits that are involved in JP Morgan Chase.
Radio City Music Hall.
A story in the making. The world is ours for the taking.
Can I get a big Women on the Move welcome for Gwyneth Paltrow?
Cardin.
Women on the Move has been incredibly inspirational for me. It has enabled me to be part of an organization that has literally made the lives of 49,000 women and men a better place.
Slaughter.
The importance of having a bold organization where it's a safe space to really share emotions that couldn't share with peers or colleagues or my directs has been extremely healing.
DeMoro.
I've reached out to others when I was struggling, whether it be with work or even personal. They're more friends than colleagues.
Scenes from a Pride March. Jensen.
Being a member of the JP Morgan Pride BRG, it allows me to help and participate in things that mean something to me personally, inside and outside of work. You may not get to manage a budget, but you could do that in the BRG. You may not get to project manage anything, but in the BRG you can sign up to run an event and you have to create a project.
Vlachos.
Some people are wondering, how do I do all my work and still drive BRG and be productive? And all I could say is that it truly is an investment.
Slaughter.
The culture of an organization is really the differentiator, and the BRGs are such a critical part of what our culture means at JPMC.
Cardin.
We're all just working together for the collective good.
Jensen.
People really long to belong someplace, and when you feel like you belong, you will stay at a company.
Text, JP Morgan Chase and Company.
Welcome to Day 3 of the HITEC Spring Virtual Leadership Summit. The summit has been possible thanks to all our HITEC partners and primarily our host sponsor, JP Morgan Chase & Co. And now, to kick off our final day of the summit, as we discuss our digital president, Omar Duque.
Third and final day of the HITEC 2021 Spring Leadership Summit, sponsored by JP Morgan Chase. I hope all of you have found the last 2 days informative and inspiring. We have some powerful sessions still to come today, and we're happy that you're here with us. I want to take a minute to recognize the visionary leadership of this organization. The HITEC Board of Directors is truly one of the most dynamic boards I've ever had the privilege to work with. So please join me in recognizing our amazing board of directors, beginning with Adriana Torres, Senior Vice President at Oracle, Lucia Suarez, Managing Director at the Carlyle Group, Marcelo DeSantis, Executive Advisor at ThoughtWorks, Jesus Mantas, Senior Managing Partner at IBM, Maria Lensing, Chief Technology Officer at McKesson, Yamila Harris, Global Head of Support, IT Service Delivery at Munich Re. Juan Carlos Gutierrez, Head of LATAM Solution Architecture and Customer Success at Amazon Web Services. Jonathan Echeverria, Managing Director, Bank of America. Jesse Cortez, Vice President for Executive Talent at McKesson. Alvaro Celis, Vice President, Worldwide Devices and Customer Channel Sales for Microsoft. Nelly Borrero, Managing Director and Senior Global Inclusion Diversity Lead for Accenture. Daryl Higueros, Founder and CEO, Next Generation Inc. Miriam Hernandez Keiko, Principal and Global Head of Management Consulting for KPMG. Rosa Ramos Kwok, Managing Director at JP Morgan Chase. And our chair, Guillermo Diaz, CEO at CloudSpot. I am thankful for their vision and confidence. Together, we will continue to lead and build on this amazing community, working to celebrate our executive leaders and working to develop the next generation of Hispanic technology leaders into the C-suite and into the boardroom. I hope that you've all been inspired by the sessions, by the thought leaders, and more importantly, by this unique community of Hispanic tech leaders. More than 50% of the folks participating with us during the summit are new to HITEC. And I hope that you walk away with the notion that we as an organization are committed to you and your growth. And we hope that you will stay engaged with us moving forward. Exactly 1 year ago tomorrow, we launched our webinar series called HITEC Live. And in the past year, we've hosted 36 HITEC Live webinars. I encourage all of you to join us for our upcoming programming every other Friday. Be sure to check out HITEC Live on our website for an upcoming schedule. I also invite you to learn more about how you can continue to engage with us at HITEC. And I hope you'll explore some of our other programming, including our Emerging Executive and E+ program, our Board Readiness program, as well as our HITEC 100 and HITEC 50 recognition. HITEC staff will be in the open networking during our 15-minute break. So please join us if you want to continue networking or if you want to learn more about some HITEC programming. I also invite you to be on the lookout for our one-day Summer HITEC Leadership Forum, which you'll learn more about later today. As we close out this third and final day of our Spring Leadership Summit, I hope that you've been inspired to go back to your work and to do better. I hope that you walk away expecting more of yourselves, because we all need you to exceed your own expectations in order for us to truly excel as a community. Joining us next is Ramon Baez, the chairman of the HITEC Foundation. Ramon will be talking to you about our work at the foundation, but before he joins us, as we're talking about inspiration, I want to share with you one piece of news that we recently learned about one of our HITEC scholars, Isabel Gallegos, a Latina from Albuquerque, New Mexico, currently studying computer science at Stanford University. Because of Isabel's connection to HITEC, she recently interned as a software engineer at Microsoft, and she's currently an intern at Apple, both HITEC partners. But here's the real news. Isabel just received her first US patent for her work in an automatic method of material identification for computed topography. How amazing is that? This is why we need your support ongoing. We're currently partnering with Reviture to help HITEC scholars and other Hispanic college students gain the skills they need to compete for opportunities just like the one Isabel had. So if you know of any college students or young professionals looking to gain IT certifications and experience, please connect them with us. Because of this partnership, students will have access to free certification classes, as well as access to internships and jobs with HITEC corporate partners. Please be sure to connect with us to learn more. This is the impact that this community is having on our future leaders. This is why the work of our foundation is so critical. And so now, please join me in welcoming HITEC Foundation Chairman Ramon Baez.
Well, thank you, Omar. I really appreciate that. And that is fabulous news about Isabel. That is why we do this. As you said, this is why we're here. Well, I'm hoping everyone here today has been totally informed and inspired this week, as Omar talked about, all at the same time, because it is important. You need to be able to get the information. But if it doesn't inspire you, you won't take action. And we're hoping that's what it did, so you can take action. Before I give you an update on the foundation, I would like to thank my fellow board members that served with me on the foundation board. Yvonne Valdez, Patricia Rios, Carlos Emesquita, Jesse Cortez, and Gloria Candelario. They are wonderful people. They have a passion for this. This is what we get excited about. And when we hear news like we just did from Omar, it even gets us more excited. You know, I don't know if you know how we're structured in the foundation, but we have 3 programs. And today I'm going to focus only on one of them. But we have our scholarship program, our mentorship program, as well as our internship program. Our scholarship program is led by Dina Jones, and I just want to give you a brief update of where we've been and where we are now and where we're going. So overall, since 2017, the HITEC Foundation has awarded over $450,000 in scholarships to more than 70 high-tech scholars. You know, these are technology-related majors, and they're not limited to, but I'm just going to give you a few examples. Computer science, computer, electrical, mechanical engineering, and cybersecurity, as well as my favorite, information technology. The universities, and again, this is just a small list, but the universities that we have students that are scholars that attend these universities is Harvard, Stanford, NYU, University of Chicago, Marquette University, Florida International University, New Jersey Institute of Technology, and many more. The list is just way too long to be able to capture in a 3-minute spot. But last year's cohort, some of you may have remembered this, but we had 35 undergraduates and graduate students. Pursuing technology majors were each awarded $5,000 scholarships. 70% of our scholars were female. 37% are returning high-tech scholars. Now, this year's applicants, this is real exciting. We actually have completed 120 applicants. So in other words, we have applications that went through the whole process and they're fully completed. So our sponsorship team, our scholarship team can identify which ones are going to be selected. This is a 90% increase year over year. This doesn't happen by accident. Our scholarship team is working with universities through social media, working with teachers, working with counselors to make this happen. 19 of the applicants that were previous high-tech scholars that completed these applications, 38% are female. And what's really interesting is 40% are high school seniors entering to their freshman year. So the next steps is we go through, we do a quality check and validate that the information is correct. Our board is meeting at the end of the month. We will go through and identify our target, what we're going to go after this year. But it is an exciting time. And I am so glad that HITEC chose to do this since we've been doing this since 2017. It's just been amazing. Fundraising. Last year, as we all know, was a very, very different year. And 2020 for us was very unique. I'll say, I will, well, for a way of saying it, I guess, but very unique. And our typical fundraising was impacted due to the COVID-19 restrictions. But even with all that, we were able to raise over $145,000 for our scholars from our generous donors. We ended the year in the bank, cash in the bank, $293,000. And this would not have happened if it wasn't for the generosity of all of you within the HITEC community. So we thank you for your amazing generosity. The call to action is pretty much very similar to last year. We still have more to do. We have more to do with scholarships, mentorships, and as well as internships. And we have an incredible amount of young people that want to work in a vocation that many of us love. And with your generosity and your support, your unwavering support has such a positive impact. We hope that you continue to do that with us. Think about what a $5,000 scholarship would have meant to you when you started your journey, your higher education journey. That's what's happening with these young people. And it's incredible to have the stories like we just did with Isabella. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your continued support for HITEC, the HITEC Foundation, with your treasure and with your time. Have a fabulous rest of your day at this virtual event. Thank you. Back to you, Omar.
And now, for the time-honored tradition of the HITEC check-in, here are some greetings from a few of our event attendees. In the spirit of the traditional HITEC check-in, at our in-person summits, let us know who is here and what country you're from via the chat feature. And if you're new to HITEC, let us know also. We would love to welcome you and give you the proper bienvenidos to the HITEC familia.
Hola HITEC familia, I'm Rosa Ramos Kwok. I'm a managing director at JP Morgan Chase. I'm also the proud vice chair of HITEC. I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I'm also a 2021 EEP mentor. Welcome.
Hola HITEC familia, my name is Raul Esquivel and I'm a senior product manager with United Airlines and I'm originally from Venezuela.
Hi everyone, my name is Raymond Reese. I'm a Cuban American and I live here in beautiful Tampa Bay, Florida. I'm a vice president at JP Morgan Chase, where as a technology program manager, I build and lead diverse high-performing teams that deliver best-in-class solutions for our clients. I look forward to meeting all of you.
Buenos dias, mi gente. I'm very excited to join this summit. My name is Jillian Perez, and I am from PwC. I'm a supervisor there with the My Admin Concierge team. And I am Puerto Rican, but born and raised in New York, currently living out of the beautiful Orlando, Florida.
Hello, hola, my name is Artemio San Martin, and I'm a Director of Strategy, Operations, and Communications for Digital Design at Dell Technologies. I am originally from Mexico, and I'm very excited to be part of the HITEC Summit one more time. Looking forward to excellent sessions and great networking. Thank you, gracias.
Everyone, I'm Adriana Torres, SVP of Global Support for Oracle, and my country is Brazil.
Hello, my name is Rodrigo Garcia, Sales Director of Trend Micro. I live in São Paulo, Brazil.
Oi, tudo bem? Olá, como estás? My name is Antonio Figueiredo. I was born in Brazil, but I lived here in US since the 90s. I work for Salesforce. I'm looking forward to this program.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine Santana. I'm an executive director at JP Morgan Chase. I live in New York and I'm from the Dominican Republic.
Good day to my HITEC family. My name is Jonathan Echeverria. I'm a managing director at Bank of America. I also have the privilege of serving on the HITEC board of directors. I'm honored to represent Ecuador.
My name is Manuel Velasco. I am a customer success specialist at Cisco y soy mexicano.
Good morning. My name is Mike Cáceres. I'm the head of data science software engineering at MassMutual, and I am originally from Argentina.
Hola, my name is Cristina Cuaron. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Technology Infrastructure Services at Bank of America, and I'm from Mexico City.
Hello, HITEC family. My name is Américo de Paula. I'm Solutions Architecture Leader in Latam for Amazon Web Services. I'm Brazilian and I live in Santiago, Chile since 2018.
Good morning. My name is Giselle Plester Borda. I'm an engineering manager at Wells Fargo and my family's from Chile.
Hi, my name is Daniel Garcia. I work for Liberty Mutual Insurance. I am the CIO for Latin operation, which includes
Colombia, Ecuador, and Chile. I am from Venezuela, and this could sound controversial to my Colombian friends, but we create the tasteful arepa.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prieto. I'm a Principal Data Science Manager at Microsoft, and I'm Puerto Rican. Boricua!
Hola familia, I am Roberto Ricosa, Vice President for F5 in Latin America out of Miami. And I am originally from Mexico. Así que, salud, viva Mexico.
Hello, my name is Edwin Solis. I am the President of Oni Solutions, and I'm from Mexico.
Hello everyone, my name is Renee Victoria Rivera, and I'm a Vice President at Nolan, y yo soy puertorriqueña.
Hello everyone, I'm Andres Cortez, Global Strategy Manager at Cisco. I'm glad to be part of this team, and I'm proud Colombian. Thank you.
Hello everyone, coming to you from Quito, Ecuador. My name is Carlos Granda. My father's from Ecuador, my mother's from Peru. Welcome to HITEC Spring Leadership Summit.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucia Suarez. I am a Managing Director at the Carlyle Group, and I'm a proud board member of HITEC. My parents are from Portugal, and I am proud to be a Portuguese American.
Hi everyone, my name is Rosemary Delgado, and I am a Program Manager at Microsoft. I was born in El Salvador, and I consider myself a Salvadoran American because I migrated to the US when I was a child. I'm really happy to be here at HITEC.
Hello, my name is Roger Mendez. I'm a Business Operations Manager at Cisco for Customer Experience, and I'm so excited to be able to say hi. And my origin is I'm half American, half Bolivian, so to all my people in Santa Cruz, te quiero, but I'm so excited to be a part of this conference.
Here to lead us in a fireside chat featuring Steve Miranda, EVP of Applications Development at Oracle, please welcome Miriam Hernandez Keiko, HITEC Board Member, Principal and Global Head Management Consulting Practice, KPMG.
Thank you and welcome everyone. I'm always so enthusiastic when I hear the check-ins. I remember at my very first conference about 4 years ago, listening to people do it in a room was quite impressive. I think it was maybe 200 people. And by the time we did our last conference, which happened to be at Oracle, interestingly enough, our last live conference, which was in October of 2019, Steve, sponsored by Oracle, I think there were 700 people in that room introducing themselves. And now listening to it on camera is even more impressive. So I'll just say I'm a proud Mexicana, born in Guadalajara, Mexico, came to the United States when I was 9 years old, and happy to be on the HITEC board and to be sitting here today with Steve talking about digital acceleration, customer experience, leadership styles. We have a lot we want to chat about, but first let Steve introduce himself and check in.
So thank you, Miriam. Thanks for having me today. I too was excited to see those check-ins. It's fascinating. A lot has changed from work from home and this Zoom or other video technology. So it was kind of nice to see everybody's check-in, but a little bit of their personalities behind the scenes and where they were sitting and kind of context. So it was great. Myself, I'm Steve Miranda. I'm a EVP at Oracle, managing the application development. I am a second generation. All of my grandparents were born in Mexico. My parents and myself, my parents first generation in California, and I was born in California. So a proud Mexican American.
You know, it's interesting. I think when my mother was choosing where to come to in the United States, it was between California, Dallas, Texas, and Kansas City, Missouri. She picked Kansas City, Missouri, where you had to learn English or you couldn't survive because there were no Mexicans in Kansas City that spoke Spanish. There were plenty of Mexicans. And so I always say to her, Mom, how'd you end up picking Kansas City and not Los Angeles, for God's sakes? But anyway, I ended up in Los Angeles going to school there, but Kansas City was a great place to grow up before anybody from Missouri gets mad at me. So Steve, we talked a lot about what we wanted to chat about today. And I think we have some topics that go all the way from business and the new reality we're living in, all the way through our own stories. And I wanted to just kick off with some of the business stuff, if you don't mind. I know Oracle well. KPMG's a strong partner of Oracle's, but I really want to hear from you, sort of the guy at the middle of this. What is really your vision for the evolution of Oracle's product line?
Okay. So I think at Oracle, think of us, we're obviously a large company, but to try to simplify it, we have a technology business, which has traditionally been centered around the database, and now is the database plus our Gen 2 cloud services. So basically infrastructure hosting cloud service. That's one half. The part where I'm focused on and that my team works on is the application side. Again, we were traditionally on-premise applications like e-business suite and PeopleSoft and Siebel. But over the last decade or so, we've re-platformed, really rewrote things from the ground up, becoming a SaaS application. So big Oracle, there's really a big shift from, we've always been good at managing data, we've always been good at infrastructure, but really shifting from that traditional on-premise model to a cloud model, which involves not only product changes, which we've engineered to do, but also changing from a product company to a service company in the cloud. Now, in our space, our growth strategy is really in applications, particularly enterprise applications. It's kind of a new generation coming up. Most of our customers and most of our competitors' customers made their decisions, large ones, really around Y2K. And these were when on-premise products got their foothold, as you know, your partnership with KPMG helped us, along with many others, and helped our competitors as well, implementing kind of pre-Y2K. Well, for many reasons, technology is involved, business processes are involved, and the combination of those, really now is the time when companies are moving to the cloud and transforming business models. So, you know, in high tech, you guys are all familiar with technology, a variety of sorts, particularly centered around the cloud. But what's also happening in enterprise business is businesses are changing. Lots of companies are moving from product companies to service companies. Lots of companies are trying to become the disruptor or trying to prevent keeping up with a disruptor in their industry, and really fundamentally changing what they offer. And what that means to us at Oracle as that data provider and that infrastructure provider is they need a lot of new business processes to manage that change, and a lot more nimbleness on an ongoing basis, because no longer are we in a world where companies stay very static. Companies are much more dynamic than they used to be. So we really feel very strongly as this shift is happening, both technology and business-wise, our SaaS applications are the perfect fit. And that's really what's growing our business and what's growing our market share. And we hope to take us forward in the future as well.
You know, it's interesting to me. I sort of have a two-pronged question, but just a thought as you were talking. I hear some of your fellow technology companies that we also partner with. You know, it's a big ecosystem. Yeah. I hear some of them say that they're really the future because they're much more around the customer and much more around managing the enterprise and all of the workflow among the enterprise, which, by the way, I'm a big believer in having a connected enterprise. But I'm just wondering, from a Oracle perspective, don't you see yourself in the customer experience business and the workflow management business? We don't hear Oracle talk about that as much, but yet I know you have a strong belief around that.
Well, definitely. So I'd say two parts. One is in the customer business for sure. And what we try to take the approach is try to give customers as much end-to-end business solutions. I mean, we're a large organization. We have a large portfolio. So when we take the customer, we like to take it all the way from inception, really, or pre-inception from a customer, a prospect or a lead or an unknown, from advertising on through to the what's today known as the Salesforce automation process or the customer experience process, but also through the back-end fulfillment in very integrated fashion. So it's not only in some companies, you know, how do you find the customer, how do you track that customer and sell to them, but also once you sell to them, how do you fulfill those goods? How, if you're a manufacturer, how do you manufacture the goods? What's the most efficient delivery process? Which again is another extremely dynamic area of change. So we do look at that focus on the customer process and try to take it as end-to-end business solutions as we can.
I love that idea of fulfillment, right? Because if you think about customer experience, it isn't just about the experience they have in the moment that they're connecting or ordering a product or calling in a service call. It's how do you fulfill on that promise all the way through. So I love that perspective that you're bringing to it. It's I think critical if our mutual clients are really going to develop sticky customer relationships, if they don't have that fulfillment piece worked out, man, it's almost worse than making good customer promises if you can't fulfill them, right?
Well, one of my favorite examples, I think all of us have this experience, is when you have a repair at your home. And let me not pick on any industry, but you have a repair person come into your home. So we have a product that's really expertise at scheduling the expert to have that time of arrival and doing that calendar with the customer. But it does us no good if the person who you scheduled to arrive doesn't have the skill set you need to make the repair. It also doesn't do you any good if the parts they might need aren't available to them in the location when they need it, in the time that they need it. So we've all, I think, had this experience that you get the scheduling process. First of all, it's not exact. You wait, hours at home for the person to arrive, and then either A, they're the wrong person, or worse, they're the right person, but then parts not available. Let me go back and reschedule, and you go through the process again. So it's really that end-to-end fulfillment and looking at the entire business process, which we think we bring some unique perspectives to help that customer experience on behalf of our constituents.
So let's turn to where we are in the reality today. We've lived through a year, almost exactly a year of shutdown and the pandemic in the U.S. And hopefully we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. I know that this, we read lots of reports about digital acceleration. We're living it every day. What has this pandemic and this whole experience of the last year said to you? Has it changed your mind? Has it changed the way that you're thinking about the application development and how you grow your business?
No, I mean, I'll give you some examples. It's been interesting, very unexpectedly, at least to me. I would say that the last year has accelerated things. Now, the reason for acceleration varied depending on the customer and the industry. We had a customer who was a hospital in New York, and they actually accelerated and went live with a human capital solution during the pandemic, really at the heart of it. And that was really to better serve their first line, the caregivers, and give them better service from an HR perspective. We have another distribution organization who was part of the distribution of PPE and some of the early response to COVID. So they had a two-part problem. One was they had this massive acceleration in demand due to COVID. And two is they had this shutdown in various places and parts of the world, which made it more challenging in terms of import-export and what they were allowed to do. So not only do they have a spike in demand, but they had previously unknown challenges in terms of their supply chain and how to actually fulfill it. So they actually accelerated the solution. We had other customers in the hospitality suite, hospitality area, that had a slowdown. I mean, there was no travel. People weren't staying in hotels, especially early. So they actually used it as an opportunity to accelerate some of their infrastructure work in terms of IT, because they said, without guests and without a slower time, they took advantage of that, which again accelerated. And I think, frankly, from a people perspective, and it's a little bit unfortunate, there was less travel, there was less vacations. And so, projects were actually moving at a faster clip than we had seen previously. All of that, to your question now, did it change our viewpoint? We've been saying for quite some time that the reason we felt our SaaS and our cloud solution was effective was the speed of change and this increased speed of change. I mean, this was in a very unfortunate way, in a very global way, but I think we've all experienced the speed of change in the last year that no one could have expected and predicted. But while we certainly don't think that the change is going to be as disruptive and as negative as the one we just are going through, but as far as technology allowing us to change faster, we don't think that's going to stop. And that's what we fundamentally believe.
It's interesting to me as I look at different clients that I work with, this digital acceleration, this accelerating of projects, this acceleration of budget, right, and really focusing more money on these projects. It's very interesting to me how innovative and how it's turned on a whole different way of thinking about things for many companies, right? So where you thought something was not possible, I mean, if you really look at major companies, it was a number of days before we were all set up to work remote, right? I mean, who would have thought? And yes, there were issues with supply chain and call centers and this and that. But in terms of getting employees ready to work and be productive away from the office, it seemed like it turned on a dime, at least with all the major companies. So that turned to me into more innovation and more time to think about, okay, since we're faster, what can we think about there's no roadblock to doing what we need to do. I don't know. I think there's something there about the way that people started thinking about the art of the possible, because that acceleration itself and the ability to turn the way we were working into a remote environment so quickly. Did you see that? I think there's been a lot of innovation in the last year, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually been amazed by it. Like I said, I at least personally was pleasantly surprised at the speed of innovation, at just the resiliency of people across many different industries of very quickly adapting, everything just in the way we work. I mean, if you would have told me at that conference in October that, we're going to have this in a year and a half, except no one's going to be there in person. I'm not sure if I would have believed that. And here we are, with this tremendous audience and able to do this. And unfortunately or unfortunately, I think it's a normal part of our day now. So the adaptability and change, I think that when people see that, I think you're right, that just spawns new ideas. And new ideas really, once you see the art of the possible and live through it the way we have, those ideas really take hold.
Its technology is almost limitless, right? At this point, I remember back in the day when I worked at Bell Communications Research at Bell Labs, and scientists used to tell me, "Hey, this is nothing. Wait to see 20 years from now how quickly we're going to be able to turn technology over." And I would say, "Oh, okay." And then, sure enough, that it just, Moore's law, it just keeps getting faster. So I want to turn. We've been talking about this remote working and the applicability of technology and the speed of change. What about the people side of it, right? What about, I'll tell you my observation, and I'm interested in yours. There was like this peak. I know my own personal. I was traveling a lot. Suddenly I was able to be home. I could have dinner with my family. I was not having to get on an airplane. It was fabulous. I could walk every day while I was on a conference call. And then like 7 months in, when you realize this isn't going to end anytime soon, people are saying now, "Oh my goodness, I'm on video calls 12, 13 hours. I don't have time to think." At least I used to think when I walked from one office to another. What are you seeing at Oracle in terms of the impact on this remote working on your employees?
Well, I think we're seeing much of what you just described, which is the Zoom fatigue or the video fatigue. I don't know how much of that is the work component, but the work component added with just the uncertainty of life and the uncertainty of this pandemic, just adding to everybody's stress. And when that stress is global, it becomes very, very difficult. But I think what we expect to happen, first of all, we're trying to be very cautious and careful with the employees and everybody's health and safety. So we're not doing any kind of a rush. But my own personal view is that, first of all, I'm looking forward to getting back to some work in the office time. And then secondly, I do think that would be necessary for a lot of groups. I think that for our team and for many teams, we knew each other. We've been working in person. We knew each other over the years. And when you take that and shift it to remote, it's one thing because, people, et cetera. As teams grow and as new teams come on board, I think it becomes a little bit more difficult without any in-person contact. I mean, I know before the pandemic, as you would have clients or you would have, remote sites and you would go on a visit and something changed. Even a day or an afternoon of meeting somebody in person, talk to them in person, even if it was on a phone call afterwards, there was a different relationship that you had. And so I think where we end up is because of both the Zoom fatigue that you talked about and some of these other things that are, the softer side of how you get to know people and interact with people. My personal opinion is we'll end up in some blended reality of the two. Again, but I wouldn't have predicted we had this much success on work from home remote in the first place. So, maybe I'll be surprised, but I'm fairly certain we're going to need some kind of a blending. And it's nice now that we have this option. I think it, opens up to, geographically opens things up. It opens up to different size customers, innovation, like a lot of the playing field just gets leveled because of the technology.
I agree with you. I think we're going to end up in some sort of hybrid situation. Same for us, same for me. Once you have the trust with a team or with a client, and it's easy to transact remotely this way. But I worry about our, people that we're hiring into teams and they don't really know the organization and the organization doesn't really know them. How do you retain that talent? How do you grow that talent? How do you help them develop their careers? So I think that there will be answers to how to do some of that remotely. I know really smart people are thinking about that right now. But I do think there's going to have to be some hybrid in order to have that human interaction. You just can't get away from the fact that at the end of the day, we're humans and that there's some live human interaction in a conference room that you need in order to blend and mix and match and get to know each other and trust each other. I do wonder, just on this topic of what's happened over the last year. We see a lot of information out there. We at HITEC read out on this at one of our conferences, but you see research and studies that say that as young people are coming into the workforce, and due to all of the pandemic, the social justice movement over the last year plus, that potential employees and recruits are really looking to corporations to see what their value system is and to see, hey, do my values match up with Oracle's or do they match up with KPMG's? And so you see corporations spending a lot more time on those type of social justice, equality, inclusion, diversity, sustainability. I'm just wondering if your perspective on, what can corporations actually do to make sure that there is a blending of that? I mean, corporations are in the business, in the making profit and building business. How do you blend that with having, being able to live your values, I guess, is the question. Is there a place for corporations to do that?
Well, yeah. So first of all, I think yes is the answer. And then I think I'll speak, Oracle participates in a number of different ways. But before I get to that, let me just say, it's not only for the social justice aspect. We believe strongly, and we have data that shows evidence that our diverse teams are more effective. They have lower attrition. They produce better products. They're more innovative than teams that are less diverse. So, in terms of your blending, that yes, corporations are in it to make a profit, but we believe pretty strongly, not only is it the right thing to do, having this focus on diversity, but it's also effective for the company and effective for our customers in terms of how we present to our customers and the products we build and services we provide for our customers. So not only is it the right thing to do, we think it's the better thing to do. Now, where we focus mostly Oracle, we've had a lot of focus on underrepresented groups. And this is a little bit Oracle's main focus, but it's also my own personal belief, particularly in high tech, particularly in underrepresented groups like the Hispanic background, like African Americans, like women in high tech. It's really a gap early in the cycle. And Oracle has a tremendous focus on education and our investment in education towards that social justice. In fact, I don't know if we are now the only, but we were the first company that had a public high school. It's actually on our campus at Oracle headquarters. It's right there. And we donated land, but it's a public high school. And that's just one part of our commitment to education. And our focus on is not only high-tech education in general, but specifically targeting those underrepresented areas to try to have more qualified candidates into the general pool. Again, which at least in our company and most of this group that focus on high technology, those underrepresented areas, starting early we think is key, and getting that early education, particularly not only for Hispanics but for African Americans and women. Or girls at a younger age. It's just a tremendous problem, and that's where our focus is. Now, there's many other things. There's climate areas that Oracle has a lot of investment in, and other social responsible act. But if I pick one, I think what Oracle's most proud of, and where I personally think the bigger impact will be towards that diversity, is in the focus on education.
Yeah, it's a passion of mine. I would say that a lot of where I spend my time when I want to give back is around education and KPMG as well. That's where we focus, is on education at different levels. And then also just helping to create the next generation of leaders, which I think that in the roles that you and I have, and many of us in high tech have, that's a responsibility that we have to help create the next generation of leaders, right? Speaking of that, leadership style. I'm curious to ask you to share a little bit about your beliefs and your leadership style, and what's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I can do, is just kind of what's worked for me. I don't pretend to be, a management guru or leadership guru any style, but what I've seen effective for me and in the group is, there's lots of different ways that you can lead, and lots of different ways that you can manage a group. But all of us have different personalities and bring different things to the table. I mean, go back to those check-ins. You can just see people's personality from how they introduce themselves and can go forward. And what I found is that when you are just open to and true to your personality in your leadership style, I think that comes through. And I think that whether people like it or agree with every decision or don't agree with every decision, if they know where you're coming from and they know that that's truly you and that's your belief and you're doing the right thing, for the customer and for the employees and for the company, my view is that you get much better response and become a much better leader that way. And then personally for me, in terms of what works, boy, it just, if you weren't really, true to your own personal style and the way you work and what you like to do and handle yourself, just be exhausting. You just can't, just like, here's how I am, and this is what I present myself as, and I try to lead in that way. It's not the same style as some other people. They may, dive into more details or less details or have a different dynamic in how they deal with people. But, hopefully, what I try to do, what I think I do, is if you're dealing with me in a work related situation, you're dealing with me outside of work, I think you're going to see something very similar. And I think that what that gives is, a level of consistency that people can rely on. And I think it's easier for you as a leader. So I try not to guide people towards, follow this person or follow that person or try this style, but rather adapt some of those key things in leadership to your own personality, your own work style, and how you communicate with people.
It's I was having a conversation with one of my mentees this week, actually. And she was asking me about, what do you do in a political situation when, she's been recently promoted. She has a big job at a Fortune 10 company. She's a dynamo. And she said, oh my God, at this level, the level of politics that go on, what do I do? How do I handle it? And I said to her, first thing you need to do is be comfortable with how you're going to react to it. Everyone reacts to politics differently. And it's this thing about being true to yourself and your own values that I think is so important. And then we went through a whole discussion about tactics that you can use. I told her my experience is that if you take the politics in the room and you deal with the factual aspects of it and you give your opinion in the room where the politics are being played, and you don't take this outside of the discussion or outside of the room, and you really show your own beliefs and your own values in front of everyone, that just seems to work better. and you take the politics right out of it being part of who you are or part of what you get involved in. And I think it's a lot of what you're saying. It's really being true to yourself. It's much easier to maneuver things like internal politics, which we know all corporations, all firms have it, but it's how you react to it and how you give it importance or don't that I think is really critical. And she laughed at the end of it. She said, well, when you would, handle it in a room and be, push back or give your opinion, how did you do it? And I said, well, probably too strongly sometimes, but really you have to do it in a way that sounds like you're talking and not someone else is talking. And I think that builds trust among the people in the room with you.
Well, I think trust is a keyword. I think respect is the other keyword. Is that, I've been fortunate in my career, but almost every promotion that I or other people get, you're in a peer group, and then somebody gets promoted, and then you're managing that peer group. And it's very clear to me that when, if you're playing politics, it becomes a very, very difficult group to manage afterwards, because that peer group all of a sudden knows that, and they feel that. But if you've got a level of respect and trust in that group, then all of a sudden, if you become the manager, you become the lead of that group.
We lost you. I can't hear you. Sorry, I can't hear you. Not sure what happened. No one can hear you. Let me just, while we're figuring out, Steve's, are you back?
Better.
There you go. Yes, you're back. So we didn't hear what you said about being in the room and people having respect and trust. I was just going to start to.
Can you hear me now, Marion?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear us? So while we get Steve's microphone figured out, can you hear us? Let me take a question. We have a question coming in from our audience.
Okay.
The question is, do you think that allowing employees to be 100% remote going forward would be a competitive advantage for attracting and retaining talent?
Maybe. I think that having a lot of flexibility is going to become a table stakes for attracting and retaining talent. I think 100%, as I said before, is probably overstating things a little bit. Because now in certain situations, maybe if somebody's in an area where travel becomes very difficult and they're in a personal situation where that becomes difficult, then in those cases, yes. But I think I'd probably more focus on flexibility than the 100% aspect, because I do think that having some level of that personal interaction, but a lot of flexibility. I actually would go further on that part of the statement. I think it's become table stakes already for competition in terms of retaining and attracting.
I agree with you, because I don't know that every potential employee wants to be 100% remote. I know people in the consulting business don't. They always say, well, I didn't get into the consulting business to sit at a desk all day. So yeah. I think flexibility, you're absolutely right. I think that's the table stakes. There's another question specifically for you around HCM.
Yep.
And talking about that yesterday, Workday spoke about shifting their product line to be more journey-based in order to really support evolving tech needs due to COVID. And, the question is, how do you see your applications, specifically HCM, shifting in that direction to help your clients better support their employees with a more positive experience?
So I'm not sure what Workday calls their journeys, but we have a journey capability as well, very similar. I don't know that, I think, again, COVID maybe has magnified it, but we've had some capability or believe that this has been a case for a while. So, you hear about the gig economy. And so we've had not only journeys, but capabilities within HCM to allow people to post gigs, if you will, or part-time assignments, to allow a lot more, within company dynamic and movement, and even have companies having individuals or employees sign up for gigs part-time while they're in their current role, because some companies have that where you take a percentage of your time, et cetera. So I think COVID has added some things to it, maybe accelerated it, but I think it's been a trend that's been happening in Workface for quite some time, and that's where our HCM product has been there to allow that flexibility into, let's say, a more modern but certainly evolving work style of less the traditional. Here's my job. I move, from A to B to C, but more here's my job, but I've got an idea. More dynamic teams and blended teams. So I think Journey is a part of that for the individuals component, but I think also, the quote unquote gig economy and those type of things is where our HCM is taking it, and where we see, the workforce going.
And I think the other part of that is making sure that as you're working through what customer experience looks and feels like, that you're partnering that up with employee experience, right? And the interactions between employees and customers being so critical. Therefore, they need to be feeling and seeing a similar experience. And I think that's also a very important part of this. There is a question about organizations helping or empowering ERG groups and employee-led grassroots efforts around diversity and inclusion. Thoughts on that?
Well, we're lucky at Oracle. The ERG groups are, really employee grassroots driven, or started and then grown and kind of run. So that's, we find, is very effective. What we are trying to do more and more from the corporate perspective is incorporate those groups, again, not only for the education we talked about before, but also in recruiting. So a lot of the ERG groups have either foundations like we're speaking at today for HITEC, or there's different, groups at universities that focus on different groups. And what we find is when you have awareness of those grassroots groups within the employee out in your overall corporate presence, it really helps, because then people see, okay, here's what's happening in this company. As you talked about earlier, here's the values of not only the company, but the people. So we do the best we can to promote those groups. We obviously support them corporately, but frankly, much like HITEC, with all the people who introduced themselves before, it's the people who make these groups, and it's the people who make them happen. So I don't know, it could be successful without a grassroots push from the employees and a real belief there.
I agree with you on that. And I also find, having been very involved in both the Hispanic and the women's network at KPMG, I find that it also has to have a little bit of teeth. It can't just be a social gathering, although that's good and common experience is good. Where I found that, for instance, I was on the Women's Advisory Board at KPMG, when we actually took on issues that we could help KPMG progress and change, it was a much more dynamic group that pulled in people, and women actually wanted to be part of it and take time out to do it. And I think that's generally true, that when they're more action oriented and you take on, an activity or a task or something you want to change within the organization and have a positive impact on, I think they tend to also be more successful. So I know that we only have 5 minutes left. You and I talked about the fact that we were both technology leaders who happened to be Hispanic, right? We didn't pick to be Hispanic. We are Hispanic, but we did pick to be in technology. That was something we chose. What do you think in terms of your own story as being a tech leader, being interested, and I know you really have a very long career, an important career at Oracle. What did you see work for you to achieve these career ambitions and this love for technology that you've had?
Well, long, yes, career, important. I don't know. We'll see. Let others judge that.
I didn't mean to say long as in like, oh my goodness, so long.
Oh no, it's been long. It's been long. No,
I would say you have a pretty important role at Oracle.
I think, in seriousness, I think that, again, what I've tried to do is, focus on the broader corporate goal, not get into the individual politics. And then importantly, earning the respect of peers. And having that respect of peers so that when I've been fortunate and or, in the right place at the right time to have opportunities and they presented themselves, like I say, I manage a large group and we make lots of decisions if people leave or if we need to progress and put different leaders in place. I will tell all of you, we always have the conversation of who's the best person, but also what's the effect on the entire team. And, if you've got two people and they're very close, but one, the team is going to react very negative to, and the other, the team is going to react very positive to, it's a very obvious and easy decision. And we just, almost never try. I mean, now we may get some wrong along the way, but certainly that's our thought process. And with me, I'm heavily reliant, or now totally reliant, on the team that we have and a trust system and support system we have amongst the team. And so that is what, early in my career, a mentor of mine, introduced me to the concept of people equity. He said, people think of equity and think, okay, I'm going to get stock or get this. He said, you build people equity. And, he kind of convinced me that I actually had more impact where I was in the group that I was in trying to move around, because I had gained a level of trust and a level, of working relationship with people. And that people equity, I was able to be very valuable there, more valuable there, because I get more things done, in that group that I have than I could if I, up and shifted away. And so I think just, I'm not saying that you shouldn't shift or people shouldn't go there, but I think keeping in mind that investment in people equity in terms of overall career goals, and having that respect and trust, it plays out over time.
Yeah, I love that. People equity, respect, trust, people equity, collaboration, working towards the bigger good. I think that about sums up. I know that we're getting ready to move to our next speaker. Steve, it's been a great pleasure to talk with you, and I hope we get to talk again off camera.
Miriam, thank you very much, and thanks for everybody for having me. Truly
it was
a pleasure.
Great. Thank you so much. And I think it's now going to our next speaker.
Our next session, New Normals or New Frontiers, is presented by Carla Ungarinde, CEO and 10 Coaching and Consulting, LLC. Welcome, Carla.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the last 3 days. Happy Friday to everyone. This has been, I've only been able to catch some of the segments, some of the sessions. Always the music is fantastic. And I'm always happy to be part of my HITEC familia. We're going to take a little bit of a detour. And so indulge me, please. For those of you who know me, remember me, I'm always talking energy, and we will get there. But I really want to talk a little bit about 2020, just for a moment. The topic, what we're going to go through, is new normals or new frontiers. And you hear us, myself included, desperately searching for a new normal, trying to get back to something that feels familiar, even if we have to force fit it and say, okay, 12-hour Zoom days is familiar now, and so that's the new normal. I reject that. I reject that entirely. I do not want that as my new normal. So let's just go back in time and see where we end up. Today is, this is March 2021. I'm going to take us back to March 6th, 2020. My husband and I were out for, I'd like to call it date night, but it really wasn't. It was his birthday. I remember very, very clearly. We were downtown New York City for live music and dinner. It was really a bar atmosphere. We were celebrating his birthday and this new 2020 year. And 2020 had so much sparkle to it. It was 2020, it was in the name alone. So it sounded like we're going to have big, audacious goals. Here in the States, we celebrated in January, and everyone had very big expectations for this year. And so we were following along with that. And here we are, March 6th, hanging out for his birthday. I call it a date night because, I had on my hoop earrings. That's when you know that you're looking cute. and not the studs that makes me professional, but I had my little hoops on and I was looking good for my hubby and his birthday. And we were downtown for music. And if anyone's been downtown in New York City, the music sounds even better when you're on top of each other. And everyone, not just my husband and I, but strangers that were strangers moments ago are now family. That's kind of how it is in New York. Everything is very close, tight, packed in, and the music just sounds better because you can feel it in your body. And now you're sharing tables with someone else that you just met, and it's fantastic. It just feels alive. Well, there was a cloud, or not even a cloud, but a hovering that in the news that there was a virus going around. I remember that. I remember the four of us, myself, my husband, and our two best friends, our two new best friends that we had just met. We were sharing hand sanitizer. This was before mass. There were a couple hundred people in the club, but we were sharing hand sanitizers. And I remember clearing my throat and having to say, I'm not sick, I'm not sick. So there was a sense that there was a virus, but we had no idea what was about to happen. We had no idea that the innocence we walked in with, in just a few short weeks, those New York City streets, the hustle and bustle of those streets would go totally silent. And that was the last day that we went out in that way with my hoop earrings, looking cute, and just enjoying live music with a couple hundred people, and sitting shoulder to shoulder, arm to arm, not 6 feet of distance. And when we stop and think about the moment when you realize this year was going to be different, the moment that you realize that the 2020 happy-go-lucky year that we were anticipating was going to be different. And so I'm just curious. I remember my day, because it was my husband's birthday. I'm curious to know, when did you realize that 2020 was going to be different? Where were you? What were you doing? I'm just curious. I'd like to open it up and ask the question. It's going to be important as we go through this energy conversation. What were you doing? Where were you? What was happening? I'm looking in the Q&A. I'm looking in the chat. And I don't know, actually, should I be looking in the chats, the live chat? Okay, I know your comments are coming in. And I am curious to know, because as we go through this, I see you here, canceled my trip with my family in March. Yeah. Preparing, knew it was coming. We're at home in Atlanta. I was having a conversation with my boyfriend, getting back home, celebrating. Yeah, you guys are posting so quickly, I can't even keep up with it. When schools were closed, I'd just come home from work and saw something in the news. Yeah, it's important, okay? And so I do this, I want to know, because it's important as we go through this conversation. When did it become, oh shit, this is a different year? And let's just be frank, right? We're a family, right? We're all family here. When did that knowing become real to you? Here's why it's important. And you might be thinking, Carla, please don't take me back there. Why are we going to have a conversation? Let's move forward. Let's think forward. And I'm with you. I feel you, right? No one wants to go back to that. It requires reverence. The memory of this past year requires reverence. The reverence is so that we can identify ourselves as survivors of something very important. Without that, it's very easy to become victims of something that happened to us. And with survivors, we have an opportunity to grab hold of all of the wisdom, all of the grace, all of the humility that was necessary to get through this year. And we don't want to forget it. we want it to be acknowledged for a lifetime. And that sounds grand, right? It's like, no, let's get over it. Let's get past it. Yes, but indulge me. Indulge me so that we don't get to a new normal. Strength alone is competitive. Humility is triumphant. Strength alone, I can bare knuckle anything, right? I can get through anything if I know I don't ever have to return back to it, and I can just kind of figure it out and muscle through it and be done with it and never look back, hopefully. But humility is triumphant. Humility is something that you carry with you carry forward into new frontiers, if you will. Michael Jordan says, forgive me if I get this wrong. He says, teams win games, but talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships. There is a reverence, there is a respect that comes with a remembering, because what we're remembering is that it felt horrible. We didn't get it all right. We didn't know where we were going, what we were doing, and it was chaotic. And it felt horrible in that moment. And so we can all remember that. We can remember the quiet streets. We can remember fiddling with Zoom. Now we're all experts. We can remember canceling trips, not seeing family. So let's take this hero's journey together, right? Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey. He talks about the departure. He talks about, in my words, the reluctant initiation, and then the return. We're poised right now for the return. And so let's remember the departure. Let's remember that initiation that we reluctantly walked through so that we can firmly stand in the return with choice and our humility and our grace and our wisdom that came forward. Okay? So if everybody's okay going through that journey with me, because let's just decide on some new things as we go into this. New normals, I'm not signing up for 12-hour Zoom days. So if you're with me, let's talk about what that could mean. So I'm an energy coach. What does that mean? I'm an energy master practitioner, if we want to get fancy about it. Really, all that means is if you're talking to me, I'm going to talk to you about energy. I'm going to talk to you about the importance of your thoughts, your feelings, translating into behaviors, dictating what you do. It is that powerful. And this is not a construct. This is not a coaching modality. This is not Carla's work. Energy is energy. Energy is this desk. It's this monitor. It's the seat that you're sitting in. Energy is all around us all the time. And so when we talk about energy, and when I'm working with leaders, I work with leaders in energy and their leadership teams, because it becomes this masterful tool that they get to play with. Leaders who are incredibly successful, know how to be successful, know how to run businesses. When they start to master energy, negotiate their energy, manage their energy, it is not about staying happy and skipping through the hallways with rainbows and puppy dogs. It is not that. It's about creating space for themselves in moments of crisis, in moments of decision, creating enough space for themselves to remain curious and not to plow through in a commanding way, but to actually include all of the noise, all of the chaos. Energy and an understanding of energy allows them to do that. It also allows them to interact with their teams in ways where their teams are now engaging and their teams are now offering that discretionary energy that is exclusively theirs to offer. You may get my 9-to-5 brain, you may get my 9-to-5 effort, but you don't get any more than that unless there's some place for me to put it, unless I feel valued, unless I feel like I matter. That's discretionary energy. And so leaders know how to tap into that when they know energy. And so let's just talk about energy just very, very quickly. For those of you who know, again, who know me, I'm always going to talk about energy. You probably even know that there's 7 levels to energy, right? And I can talk about it all day, as you know, because I love it. But Here's a snapshot. If there's 7 levels of energy that can put us in a position of feeling like we're surviving, feel like we're adapting to a situation, or feel like we're thriving, right? Let's just high level buckets. Specifically, level 1 is when we're feeling overwhelmed and we're drowning. We had a lot of that this past year, a lot of level 1. It affects you physically. You feel exhausted, you feel tired. You're not crazy because of that. Energy is at a cellular level. So level 1 is when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm just drowning. Level 2 is when I'm fighting back and I'm defiant. It's a great energy level. It's fantastic. Athletes use level 2 energy to win games. Protesters use level 2 energy to protest in the streets. Level 2 energy is fantastic energy. Keeps us safe. Level 3 is still and restorative. Level 4, I'm now in service with level 4 energy. Level 5 energy, I'm in cooperation with level 5 energy. Level 6, I'm in harmony. Level 7, I'm in alignment. In alignment with a greater source. You can call it God, you can call it Allah, you can call it Buddha, you can call it any source that is different than this pedestrian physical space that we occupy is level 7. And we find ourselves there. Sometimes we'll find ourselves there on vacation, hiking by a big body of water. We don't know why we're feeling emotional. It's level 7. It's a level 7 experience. So when we talk about these energy levels, again, level 1 is feeling overwhelmed and drowning. Level 2, I'm fighting mad, I'm fighting back, I'm defiant. Level 3, I'm finding ways to be still, to restore. Some people may think of it as putting an oxygen mask on your face. That's always a great way to think of it, and it may be familiar, that phrase. But you also have to remember that if I'm putting an oxygen mask on my face, that means that there's a problem. That means that the plane is going down. So level 3 does not mean I'm going to ignore it, I'm going to walk away from it. It means danger, something's wrong, but here's your mask. Take care of yourself first. So level 3 is a really important energy level. I need to be okay. Because level 4 means I'm in service with you, for you. Level 5, I'm in cooperation. Level 6, I'm in harmony. I'm not fighting. Level 7 is in alignment. When we talk about these energy levels, although they sound very neat and orderly and tidy, they are not discrete. We go through an energy dance all the time, throughout the day, sometimes on one Zoom call. John might come on the call and really getting under my skin and pissing me off, right? I might go right to level 2 and now I'm going to battle him and one of us is going to take that level 2 spot. 2 titans fighting. I'm sure you've been in that position before. I know I have. I'd like to think that not so often. I don't do that too often, but I did all the time before. When you think about coming from Spanish Harlem and you have a chip on your shoulder, that chip got me to that table. Really necessary. I was fighting, defiant about what I'm going to have and what someone might be telling me I can't have. So I'm fighting mad. But at what point do we stop fighting? And at what point do we become in alignment, in service, in cooperation, in harmony? Still, at what point? These energy levels, as I said, they're at a cellular level. It's primitive. Levels 1 and 2 are survival. So surviving energy levels. Think Maslow's hierarchy. Think fight, flight, freeze. It's everything that you know instinctively is level 1 and 2. What we do, thinking about energy and mastering energy, is we're taking that knowing of what's happening at a cellular level and combining it with our memories and our imprinting and our language that then dictates what we do. That's the important part. What we do, we're not walking around just doing things randomly. Our thoughts direct our bodies, and our bodies then say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We're always doing. When our thoughts say there's danger present, my body, efficient as it is, releases adrenaline at levels 1 and 2 so that I can get those things done, those really hard things done. So adrenaline is fueling my body. Athletes, adrenaline on the field. A car is barreling down the road toward me, adrenaline. I need to get out of the way. All really helpful. But when I'm on a Zoom call and John comes in, forgive me, all the Johns who are wonderful, delightful people, forgive me. I'm just using the name. When John gets on the call and he's coming on the call, he and I don't really get along. He's bringing his whole agenda. Here we go again. He always does this. My brain doesn't know the difference of whether or not I'm in the middle of the street, I'm on an athletic playing field, I'm on a pitch. My brain does not know the difference, just signals threat and danger, sends the signal to my body. I'm now sitting on a Zoom call full of adrenaline and no place for it to go. The year 2020 was full of level 1 energy, full of level 2 energy. I remember giving talks at the very beginning of the pandemic and thinking and saying those words, we are living in a masterclass of level 1. And I said that, and I will always speak from a position of a heart, not performance. And all that simply means is they're the things that I'm wondering about and I'm curious about, and I'm just sharing them with you. And I'm wondering, are you curious about the same things? Have you been experiencing the same things? That's what our conversations are always about. And so earlier on during the pandemic, all I kept saying was, we're living in a sea of level 1 energy. I needed to meditate not just once a day, but 2 or 3 times a day, just to find that level 3 where I can be still for just a moment, because it was so disorienting. And we typically live with a lot of level 1 and a lot of level 2. Because again, think Maslow. Am I secure? Do I feel safe? When we're trying to do really heavy work like diversity and equity and inclusion, that's very heavy work, and that's hard to reach if we're all trying to navigate a feeling of safety. It's very hard. That DEI work really lives at level 6, some level 5 and level 6, but we spend a lot of time at level 1 and 2. So think about our families as well. I was listening to some amazing speakers over the last few days, and we share a similar story of our families coming here with nothing and us being the first ones to graduate from college. I'm part of that club. The first one in my family to graduate, and it took me 9 years to graduate. 9 years. Undergrad, 9 years. Because I had work, I had 2 children, and college and school, higher education was just not part of my family's dialogue at all. So I didn't know what student loans were like and filling out forms and everything else, right? A lot of feeling overwhelmed at level 1, a lot of level 2 to say, no, I'm going to get this done. I want to get this done. So our families have a lot of level 2 energy. But again, as we talked about a moment ago, and remember, the remembering is what makes them survivors, because they weren't doing it just to be strong, just to have grit and move forward. They were doing it with a lot of humility and respect because it was purposeful. You can sit and talk to your abuela, talk to your mom, and ask them questions, and they will remember. They will remember sacrificing. They will remember what it felt like not knowing the language. They will remember that apprehension, that fear, that feeling terrified of what am I doing, but still moving on. The remembering is important. Okay, so let's take, and even, I'll tell you, HITEC's mantra, which I love, pull up, push up. There's a lot of level 2 energy in that because it's defiant, but there's so much level 6 energy in that. There's so much hopefulness in that. It's towards what? Towards something. So let's take that energy conversation and now let's wrap it into why I'm asking you, begging you to come with me and indulge me on this remembering. On a typical day, how much of your time is spent in level 1 and level 2 energy? Just consider it. It's not a criticism. It's not an indictment of any kind, but just consider how much of our time, especially with 12-hour Zoom calls, how much of our time, look at our calendars, are spent just trying to keep up, feeling overwhelmed, being defiant, saying, you know what, I'm taking my weekend, right? F it, right? How much of our time? And then how much of our time is spent in service, in cooperation, in harmony, in alignment? It's just a question, okay? Please put some of your response. I know I can't keep up with the comments as they come in. I love the comments and the conversation. Please keep them coming. I want you to keep putting them there, and just share the conversation among each other. So when we talk about remembering and we talk about energy, let's go back to 2020. Let's go back to March 2020, and 3 things were happening. We were totally unprepared. We were uncertain. And as the months continued to move forward, we were unraveling. As a human community, all across the globe, some harder than others, looking at New York City streets and seeing them empty and kind of ready for like a movie set was alarming. But we were absolutely unprepared, uncertain, unraveling. And so if we're to take that moment and just freeze frame it for just a second so that we can go into a space of remembering, so that we can actually bring forward the lessons and not make 2020 a footnote that we finally are getting over. Let's do a little I remember kind of an exercise so that we can honor it with humility, so that we are triumphant as survivors of 2020. Not victims, but survivors. That's a badge. So I'll tell you what I remember. I remember, yes, like a lot of you, canceling workshops and trips. I remember speaking with airlines and seeing if I can get a credit or what that was going to look like, and airlines not knowing and me not knowing. I remember having a first workshop online and not feeling the connection, and getting off of the workshop, the virtual workshop, feeling empty. And again, for those of you who know me, you know I get right up in your face. I might even share a seat with you and ask you to scooch over. And I remember feeling, I can't do this if I can't connect, if I can't feel them, speak to them, touch them. I can't do this. I remember that horrible feeling that I had. I remember my first online cocktail party and thinking, well, this is fun. This is kind of cute. And we can be in jammies and we don't have to, get back in our car and commute. And this is nice. I remember my first online wedding. I remember my first online graduation. I had a couple of those, actually. I remember my first online funeral. And I'm sad to say that I had more than one. You may have 2. I remember seeing my uncle, who had lost his wife. And I remember witnessing his pain and not being able to do anything about it. And almost feeling as if I was just a spectator. I remember desperately wanting to hug him. I remember the 8 minutes and 46 seconds of excruciating silence in honor of George Floyd. I remember the rage in the months that followed for the other deaths that we had, the killings. I remember missing my daughters. They're in their 30s, they have their own homes. But I remember missing them. My youngest one, her hair always smells like the beach. It always has. I don't know why. And I remember missing the feel of her back and the smell of her hair. And having a really rough afternoon and just wanting to hug them and not being able to. I remember a friend of mine losing his dad and calling my mom. And I remember how happy I was when she picked up. I knew she would, but in that moment, I was just so happy to hear her voice. And she had no idea why or what I had been going through, what my problem was. But I remember thinking, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky that she's here. What do you remember having gone through this year? What do you remember? Hold it without the language of it was a hard year. But remember what it felt like, what you saw, what you thought. So what do you remember? Just add, and I so love you guys and appreciate you guys for indulging me in this conversation, because again, I'm just curious and I just want to know what you think. Yeah, it's a lot of heartache. And I remember spending time with the kids, the fear of the unknown, panic attacks, giving birth to my first son, feeling helpful, feeling helpless. Remember these. I'm going to get to questions after, I promise I will. Remember these things, because here's what we get to do now. We get to take those in all of our infant innocence. And now remember also what we did. So I can remember, because we're now returning. We're returning to the space of what do you do with all of that learning, all of that experience that you had. So we're triumphant now. And level one, again, I remember being in a perpetual state of level one at the very beginning. I get filled up with other people's energy. And I remember feeling like there was a cloud over me. And I just missed people. I missed their smiles. I missed hugging them. So at level one, it was very difficult. At level two, I was really angry. And I was watching the news in a very unhealthy, obsessive kind of way, because I wanted to stay mad. because it felt better than feeling overwhelmed. So I wanted to stay angry. So level 2 was all news for me. So I had to find ways to restore and be still. And how can I do that knowing that we're in our home, my husband and I can't be with other people. So how do we do that? Well, level 3 is something that we did with groups that I work with. I work with different cohorts, and we started having game nights. Now, these are brilliant professionals like you, and we have game nights now. So the programs that I run, we now have evening game nights. We had one last night. They become very epic, and there's a lot of smack talk that goes on because everybody wants to win. But it's an evening. Grab your glass of wine, grab your Jack Daniels, grab whatever your drink of choice is, and let's just exhale together, have some fun, and we play Pictionary. So we have epic Pictionary games where the rules are not with the game board, but the rules get a little crazy where you can steal and it gets crazy. But we started to have game nights. And game nights became a way for us as a team, as a collective, to exhale. What about being in service at level 4? At level 4, being in service included my mom. I missed her. Typically, I'll see her maybe twice a year. She lives in Florida. We started a book club. We are on our book club every month. She, myself, and my 2 daughters. We have a book club. We are on our 11th book right now. And it has been amazing. I know more about what she's doing in her life because we have this book club. What about level 5? What about in cooperation with? Well, this HITEC forum is a great example of level 5 energy. Not fighting against, we can't be in person, we can't hire a space, we can't all be in the same physical space. But what did we do? I say we because I'm an adopted child of HITEC. But what did HITEC do? They researched, they worked with the brilliant, amazing 305 group and their partners to create this interactive platform where now there's even more people that could fit into a room at one time. Level 5 is in cooperation. There is no judgment of it being wrong or right, or this is the way we do it. We're in cooperation. Level 5, think ensemble, think performance, think improv, think jazz. There's no wrong. Let's just take everything that it is, a big old pot of arroz con pollo, and just put all the ingredients in. Level 5. Level 6. What happened at level 6? Well, it was a curious thing. Level 6 is in harmony. I mentioned briefly before that level 6 is where diversity and equity and inclusion happens. We try mightily to do it from a level 2 perspective, where there's an outcome and that we're gonna to fight our way through it. But level 6 is not about being tolerant. It's about being in harmony. And so level 6, it's what I feel sitting on top of each other at a live bar, a live music at a bar. It's level 6. We're all in the same space. There is no right or wrong. Level 6. So what's been interesting this year from the perspective and lens of level 6 is DEI efforts have exploded. We are busier now than we have ever been because of the summer that we had last year, because of those killings, because of the loss. COVID has been a bit of an equalizer for many organizations. Everyone has to be home. So someone who might be immobile can now work from home. You have more opportunities for everyone to be in the same space. So level 6 has been an incredible equalizer and opportunity because of COVID in 2020. So that's been amazing. And level 7, interesting. Level 7, I talked about it as being in alignment, right? With higher power. And I meditate and I pray every day. I was finding that I needed more. I kept being out of alignment and I could feel it in my body. I had some tostones. You guys are so funny. But I found myself out of alignment. And so what I did, and I never had an altar of any kind, but I created an altar and I put it on a lower level, so that each morning when I go to pick up my beads, I have to kneel. It's not casual. I have to kneel and pause and say, I am nothing without first kneeling. I didn't do that before because the need, well, there was an instinctive need to do that. Now there is. Now there is, and I'm so grateful for it. So we get to bring all of these things forward. Consider the examples that you are bringing forward because you've remembered and are remembering. What do you absolutely, overtly, deliberately want to bring forward because of what you remember? How do you want to be in? And when I say in, all of those energy levels of being in service, in harmony, in cooperation, in alignment. How do you want to be in? The moment you start to consider that, you're in those higher energy levels. There is a, Faulkner is, I am a student of literature. My academic degrees, I have an undergrad and a graduate degree. That's not bragging because it took me like a lifetime. So I'm not bragging about that, but they are in literature, they're in English. So I tend to quote my literary idols. And Faulkner said this during his 1962 Nobel Prize acceptance speech. 1962, a time of civil rights, violence, Vietnam, great division. And in his speech, he said, I believe that man will not merely endure. He will prevail. He is immortal, not because he alone among creatures has an inexhaustible voice, but because he has a soul, a spirit capable of compassion and sacrifice and endurance. And I believe that too. I believe that too. So we resist the urge to call things new normals. And I know why, I promise I know why, because we just want to get back to something that feels like we're in control and it's familiar and our homes look familiar again, and we're not trying to share space, working spaces with our children and things like that. I get it. And we can reach for more and create new frontiers with the things that we remember that we're bringing forward. So this is our return from the epic journey that we took. This is our return. And language matters. Language holds energy. And language sets our intention. And what's an intention except organized energy? That's all an intention is organized energy. So be careful with your language. Choose to be in. And it doesn't mean lean in. It doesn't mean that. It really doesn't. It means choose, ask yourself, how can I be in? And know that in that moment, when you're asking yourself that question, that you're already leaning towards level 4, level 5, level 6. And we won't always be there. We're not supposed to always be there, quite frankly. We need level 2 energy. We need level 1 energy. When I just want to cocoon because I'm feeling overwhelmed, let me do that. Leave me alone. If I'm feeling really angry and I just want to be mad at that car who cut me off, then damn it, let me be angry. That's okay. But let's be survivors who are charting a new frontier, where curiosity over certainty is most important, where discernment over judgment is something that we're capable of, where not having to know is something that we honor now as a skill, as a talent. And it doesn't make us broken and it doesn't make us wrong. It just makes us capable of anything. So I offer this because language does matter. Be careful of the language that you're using when we're talking about energy. I'm going to give you one last quote just because I can't help it. And I love quotes, and I know I am looking at the time. Flaubert says about language, he says human speech is like a cracked kettle on which we play crude rhythms for bears to dance to, while we wish to make music that will melt the stars. Let's reach for something more than a return to control and being on autopilot. I know we have questions, tools. Am I writing a book? I have a book that is in process for like the last few years. So please don't make me feel guilty that it hasn't happened yet. One more question before it goes to 246. How do we get from level 1 and 2 to energy 5, 6, and 7 on a more consistent basis? Great question. Rituals and routines. Level 3 rituals and routines that allow you to pause and be still. Truly pause and be still, more than just reading an affirmation. Rituals and routines, you have to do the work that makes you stop. That's where our boundaries are created, is when we are practicing level 3. So rituals and routines. I'll read one more question, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm sure Viviana, Susanna, Omar, thank you, 305, everyone who asked me to join, and I said yes, of course, know how to reach me. What tools are available for us to move higher in levels? Is meditation one of them? Yes, meditation is absolutely one of them. Use the I remember exercise. It is not my exercise. It is a free writing exercise. It comes from a book, Joe Brainard. He wrote a memoir, and it's entitled I Remember. It's an exercise that you can do. Take 10 minutes and only 10 minutes, and write every sentence begins with the word I remember. It allows some free thinking to take place. Okay. Love you guys. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer all your questions, but I'm here. And I know that there's music following me. So HITEC music. So I'm going to turn it back to the voice of God. Thanks for having me.
Enjoy some entertainment before our next session.
Again, this is Luis Manuel from the Latin Ensemble, and we are very grateful that you are supporting the art, the music, and the Hispanic community. So what I can say is thank you so much, and enjoy, and thank you for all the people in the world that are depending on your knowledge and your learning and your actions to make a better world. This is the Latin Ensemble, and I say bye-bye for now, but we're gonna see you the next time. Enjoy!
¡Vaya qué sabor! La brisa tropical a orilla de la mar le da un rico sabor a tu boquita. La impregna de la sal le da sabor sensual, me invita a saborear tu boquita. Yo quiero disfrutar el más dulce placer, besando sin cesar tu boquita. Debajo del palmar, al son de tu mirar, permíteme soñar en tu boquita. El sabor de tu boca fresca quiero llevar en la memoria. El calor que te da la arena comparo solo con la gloria. La brisa tropical a orilla de la mar le da un rico sabor a tu boquita. La impregna de la sal, le da sabor sensual, te invita a saborear tu boquita. Yo quiero disfrutar el más dulce placer, besando sin cesar tu boquita. Debajo del palmar, a son de tu mirar, permíteme soñar en tu boquita.
El sabor de tu boca fresca quiero llevar en la memoria. El calor que te da la arena comparo solo con la gloria.
¡Opa pues! Yo soy el cantante que hoy han venido a escuchar lo mejor del repertorio. A ustedes voy a brindar y canto a la vida de risas y penas, de momentos malos y de cosas buenas. Vinieron a divertirse y pagaron en la puerta. No hay tiempo para tristeza, vamos cantante, comienza. Me paran siempre en la calle, mucha gente que comenta. Oye, Luis Manuel y de Latin Ensemble, ustedes están hechos. Siempre con hembras y en fiestas, y nadie pregunta si sufro, si lloro, si tengo una pena que hiere muy hondo. Yo soy el cantante, porque lo mío es cantar, y el público paga para poderme escuchar. Yo soy el cantante, muy popular donde quiera, pero cuando el show se acaba, soy otro humano cualquiera. Y sigo mi vida de risas y penas, de momentos malos y de cosas buenas. Yo soy el cantante, porque lo mío es cantar, y a los que me siguen mi canción voy a brindar. Dímelo, Cap. La 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 la. Escucha mi pregón que dice: Caballo viejo, dímelo. Cuando el amor llega así, de esa manera, uno no se da ni cuenta. El carutal reverdece y guamachito florece y la soga se revienta. Cuando el amor llega así, de esa manera, uno no se da ni cuenta. El carutal reverdece y guamachito florece y la soga se revienta. Caballo le dan sabana y tiene el tiempo contado y se va por la mañana con su pasito apurado a verse con su potranca que lo tiene embarrascao. El potro da tiempo al tiempo porque le sobra la edad. Caballo viejo no puede perder la flor que le dan, porque después de esta vida no hay otra oportunidad. ¡Vamos! Cuando el amor llega así, de esa manera, uno no tiene la culpa. Quererse no tiene horario, ni fecha en el calendario, cuando las ganas se juntan. Cuando el amor llega así, de esa manera, uno no tiene la culpa. Quererse no tiene horario, ni fecha en el calendario, cuando las ganas se juntan. Caballo le dan sabana y está viejo y cansado, pero no se dan de cuenta que un corazón amarrado, cuando le sueltan la rienda, el caballo desbocado. Y si una potra la sana, caballo viejo se encuentra, el pecho se le desgrana, no le hace caso a falseta y no le obedece a freno, ni lo paran pasar rienda. Cuando el amor llega así, de esta manera. Cuando el amor llega así, de esta manera. ¡Epa! Quererse no tiene
Grab a drink, but don't go too far. Our program resumes in 1 minute.
Hoje é dia de sol, alegria de coió, é curtir o verão.
Vem, Magalenha, rojão, traz a lenha pro fogão, vem fazer armação. Hoje é dia de sol, alegria de coió, é curtir o verão.
Dê, 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 dê.
Here to lead us in a discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion, please welcome Jesse Cortez, HITEC board member and Vice President, Executive Talent and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for McKesson.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the HITEC session here. As we continue our conversation, we've heard from some good speakers already, and Ramon Baez and Miriam, fellow board member, as well as Steve, and then now Carla recently here. So we'll continue some of this conversation. Certainly, I enjoy the opportunity of kind of hearing some of the, I'll call it live music in between sessions to bring our levels back up to level 5, level 6, right? And even 7, as Carla has described. So I'm eager to kind of get us started here, but maybe before we do, I'll do a quick check-in myself as the voice of God kind of shared with you. I am a part of the HITEC organization and have been with the organization for almost 12 years now with the pleasure of actually serving on both boards, the HITEC organization, as well as the HITEC Foundation. And so I'm eager to introduce our folks, but maybe just before I get a chance to introduce our panelists here one-on-one and give them a chance to check in as well. I hail from Chicago, but my family is from Mexico. And so I'm a proud Mexican American. When we started to put this panel together, one of the things that we wanted to key in on was this notion of accelerating and accelerating inclusion, right, for the outcome to achieve equity. And so what we wanted to do was bring our panelists together, give them a chance to sort of tell their story as to how they believe, accelerating inclusion can really get to equity, but also some of the learnings around some of the positive milestones and even some of the challenges that have emerged. And so we're excited to kind of share this with you as well. And so I'll go around the horn here and give each of you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. So I'll go here in alphabetical order, the way they're listed on my screen here. So Alex, I see you first with Cisco. If you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about yourself.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And so I'm Alex Allen. I am the global director for inclusion and collaboration at Cisco. I work specifically in the customer experience, operations, and also the sales and marketing organizations. I've worked for companies such as Nestle, GE, and Home Depot, and I've been in diversity and inclusion for the last 5 years. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I also see Lucida next.
So I tell people the best way to remember my name is don't lose sight of me, because it rhymes with Lucida.
And you did remind me of that last time as well.
So thanks, Jesse. It's so great to be here. And I am the head of employee D&I with JP Morgan Chase. My team sent me a shirt that I realized if the camera angle isn't right. So I'm representing JP Morgan Chase. I've been with the firm 3 years. And I, some of you here come from different industries, and I think that's the beauty of having a diversity and inclusion background. Currently at JP Morgan Chase, I'm responsible for helping our global head of diversity and inclusion drive the D&I agenda across our entire employee population of 250,000 employees. And prior to that, I was in another part of the business. In one of our lines of businesses, running D&I for the last 3 years. I've worked in hospitality, insurance, media, and a lot of different industries over the years. So I'm very excited to be here. And like you, was really happy to hear the music. My family's from Puerto Rico, so it brought back fond memories. And I was doing a little salsa in my chair, getting ready.
Yeah, those green rooms are fun when we can get a chance to at least cut a rug a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So Susan Reed, I see you next. If you wouldn't mind maybe introducing yourself as well.
Good afternoon, good morning, I guess, depending on where you are. It's nice to be here. I don't have any real tricks for you remembering my name, but it's so boring that it's easy to remember. I'm thrilled to be here, and I was enjoying the music. I don't think I've been on a virtual Zoom yet where we've had the joy of music leading into a panel, so really thrilled to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I do have maybe one ask, if you wouldn't mind, Susan, before I introduce James here. I know in your title you had mentioned that you're also the director for the Institute of Inclusion. Would you mind sharing just a bit about that?
Oh, happy to, proudly. So last year, amidst the racial equity crisis that engulfed the country, one of the things that we thought about here at Morgan Stanley is how do we make a difference in both inside Morgan Stanley, but in the world beyond. And our chairman and CEO, James Gorman, thought that one of the ways that we could do that is to stand up an institute committed to driving diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, helping to shape our internal strategy. We've had a D&I team for a long time, so it's not a new effort, but an institute with a board of external advisors who would provide input and help to shape our internal strategy. But also help to advise and shape where we contribute in the walls, beyond the four walls of Morgan Stanley. So that's the Institute. We're still very much building. We launched with a scholarship program last year. We're building on that, and we're building on a number of initiatives, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more throughout the panel.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. So last but not least, James.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Thank you, esteemed panelists. To everyone watching, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is James. My pronouns are he, him, el, and I have the distinct privilege of looking after global inclusion and diversity at Twitter. We're going to talk a lot about some of the things we're doing at Twitter. So I think that perhaps the best way to introduce me is to share a little bit about my personal journey. I was born in the Central Valley of California, which, if you know the 209 area code, you know it's known for two things, farmers and migrants. Both of my parents are immigrants, and I was basically raised on the knee of my abuela because my dad was in the fields. And my mom had this radical idea that she would go to college and have a career, which for a Mexican woman in the 60s was completely unheard of. But my childhood was marked by a time in the Central Valley where it was just deeply unpopular to be mixed race, Latinx, migrant families. And so at a very early age, I learned to hide parts of who I am. And for better or for worse, that talent would come in very handy as I hit high school, because I would start to come to terms with my sexuality. And it was the height of the AIDS epidemic. And the only thing I knew about gay people was what I saw on the TV, which was they are monsters. And I knew I didn't want to be that. And so I hid into myself a little deeper. And it wasn't until I stepped foot on the Berkeley campus that for the very first time in my life at 18 years of age, I saw an example of what it looked like for someone to show up as their full, authentic self. And that did two things for me. That gave me permission, and that gave me power. And I share that because with the benefit of retrospect, I realize that I have spent my entire life's work cultivating permission and power in other people, while simultaneously working to reimagine the systems that would ever require that be true to begin with. And it really informs how we think about the work at Twitter. And I'm happy to be here with all of you to share some of the work that we're doing.
Well, thank you, James. I appreciate you sharing your story with us and all of you, all the panelists. Maybe as we get started, one of the things that we began to discuss, right, when we started to put kind of thought behind, what we would discuss today. One of the elements that came through was this notion of equity, right? And we heard Carla say, right, that things have begun to change around the DEI space or diversity, equity, and inclusion space. But those of us that have been in that arena for some time know that equity has been largely a part of the conversation. It just may now start to feel like it's hitting more of the public, you might say, right, or the public eye. So I'd love to just maybe go around the horn here again and have you each maybe talk about what equity really means to you on a personal level, and maybe we'll start with Susan this time.
Thank you so much, Jesse. I mean, I think I love that you're starting with that question. I think equity is such an important word, and I think so many of us are starting to bring it more and more into our our conversation. And what I love about it is it basically says, let's set aside this idea, right, that it's one size fits all when it comes to DE&I solutioning, right, and that you really have to think deeply about what a population needs in order to thrive. Right. And that the level playing field, we know that doesn't exist, but even for groups that are considered quote unquote minority groups, which we know that's not the case anymore, the issues are not the same. Right. So whether you're talking about the Black population, the Hispanic Latinx population, or certainly with everything going on, our Asian American, colleagues, partners, and friends, the issues aren't the same. And so how do you make sure that within your DE&I strategy, your plan, that you're really thinking carefully about what each group needs? And look, that is a very complex subject to peel apart, but I think you've got to start somewhere. And so, we've done some things, for example, like, for years, we would look at diversity metrics and we would sort of lump Black and Hispanic together. And we don't do that anymore, because we know when you do that, you hide issues, right? You hide issues for some populations if you combine all your populations, or if you combine, Black, Hispanic, and Asian, you're hiding issues. And so peeling apart, understanding what each group needs. I think, last thing I'll say on this is, of course, the challenge that it presents for all of us as DE&I professionals is none of us have time in the day, extra time in the day. And so the more you look outside of these separate issues, the more you start to develop a pretty long agenda in terms of the things you have to do. And so I think one of the challenges we then face is approach the work through the lens of equity. But then I think, quite frankly, we've still got to figure out how we solution in ways that solves at both levels, solves across groups, but also solves within group, and do it with the time, resources, the money, and the brain space that we have. And that's always the challenge.
Yeah, no, very well said. That's for sure. Alex, you want to go next?
Sure, Jesse, thank you. Absolutely. And well said, Susan, well said. When I think of equity, I think of the systems that we have. So when we think about the employee journey and we think about how we hire, how we develop, how we engage, how we promote, that entire process of the employee journey, how do we embed fairness in each one of those steps in the process? So I do agree with Susan. I think communities have different challenges. Communities have different issues. But I also think that there is also a system or a way that we can apply equality and equity and fairness throughout each step of those process. We're going to talk a little bit about those processes in just a little bit. But one process that I think we all kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis is the hiring process, right? And so how do we, from an attraction standpoint, from a selection standpoint, from a interview panel standpoint, how do we ensure that we have some idea and some controls, but flexible controls, to be able to give our leaders and hiring managers a process to ensure that they are approaching it in a way that they could mitigate bias. So that's my thought on equity.
Yeah, no, good point on bias as well. Anytime we get a chance to certainly minimize the impact there, it is an important step for any organization. James, what would you add to the this whole notion of equity, right? And sort of your sort of personal perspective here.
Sure. It is such a timely and topical question. And, if you look at the simple definition of equity, look it up in the dictionary, you're going to see something like, equity is defined as fairness or justice in the way that people are treated. And so then what exactly is fairness and how do we define justice? And what we know is that these concepts are not absolute. They are shaped by each individual's worldviews and experiences and contextualized by world events that are happening around us. And so for me, that means on the one hand, the definition of equity is a perpetually moving target, but rather than that being something that is a barrier, I think that is beautiful because it gives us the opportunity to center the needs of the people in how we think about responding and driving equity throughout our workplaces. And I'll give you a great for example. Obviously we'll talk a lot about, I'm hoping we'll talk about a lot about last year and what it meant for our work. But certainly what we saw was that the needs as it relates to fairness and justice in the workplace for our Black tweeps. By the way, tweeps is what we call ourselves. There is an absurd amount of bird analogies at Twitter. It starts a little corny, but you get used to it, that our Black tweeps were hurting. And so, we start each journey with deep listening. And what we heard was the relentless series of world events centered in anti-Blackness was creating a level of trauma for Black tweeps that was unprecedented in their career journeys. And so what we knew immediately that in order to serve the needs of these communities, we needed to get help and make it available as part of our benefits offering. So we quickly identified therapists who are Black therapists with specialty in unpacking trauma associated with anti-Blackness and racism. We got them immediately into our benefits coverage in plan portfolio. And then we started hosting a series of events for these Black tweeps called Take Care, where folks could come in small groups and have direct one-on-one conversations with these therapists. That is a great example of how fairness and justice as the core tenets of equity is constantly evolving. And we have a responsibility and opportunity to meet people where they are and make sure that we are always delivering fairness and justice.
Yeah. Lucidia, what would you add?
Yeah, I think when I think of the term equity, I think about how people misuse or use it interchangeably with equality. And I think what everyone's talked about is, when we think about how communities are different, the fact that we need to do a better job at helping to define. I started using an image. You've all probably seen the equity versus equality images. And, when you think of equality, and if you think of an image of people trying to look at something happening over a fence, and everyone's different heights, and everyone gets one rock, that's equality, right? And you can step up, and for the tallest person, you can see over the fence and see what's happening, but maybe for the shorter person, you can't. And equity is about giving people what they need, right? And giving communities what they need to be successful. So that means the person in that image, the shorter person maybe gets 3 rocks, because then when you stack those rocks, you can see over the fence. And then the tallest person might only need 1 rock, because that might be the edge that they need to help, overcome that fence or that barrier. And ultimately, I think what we want to get to is we remove the barriers, right? We remove the fence. So we don't need different things. And of course, we'll still need different communities still will have different needs. But if we start, getting to the root of the systemic issues that are creating the barriers in the first place, we won't have to do all these workarounds.
Yeah. Yeah, James, you had mentioned obviously, kind of reflecting back on 2020, and certainly Carla kind of walked us through there. And actually, I would say that Miriam and Steve also kind of discussed a bit about, the sort of new working environment, right? Remote, virtual. Certainly, the folks that are in the audience today are no strangers, right, to this work and the technology that that sort of powers some of these connections. But when we think about sort of these conditions, if you will, right? And what has your company done really to sort of close some of those connection gaps? And what was some of the impact that has driven maybe some of the action so far, and what that impact has been like?
Sure, great question. Well, I mean, we all know it. 2020 did the most. And just when we thought it was over, surprise, 2021 showed up and continued to do even more. And if you know anyone working in I&D who does not tell you that this has not been the most challenging period of their professional career, it's one of two things. They're either not doing the work right, or they're straight out lying to you. And while there are parts of our companies that when this is long over in the rearview mirror might contract to some semblance of normal, that is not true for DEI work. Our portfolios and our scope of work has been forever expanded, and there's no going back. And quite frankly, I see that as a good thing. I don't want to go back. And here are just a few highlights of the work. So, 2020 was without question a reckoning for marginalized communities. But more importantly, it was a reckoning for the systems and the people responsible for the marginalization. And if there's any silver lining to last year, it's that, we welcomed millions of more allies to this movement. And at Twitter, we really leaned in and gave them tools and resources to understand how to show up for hard-hit communities and center their needs in their response. And so while we harnessed the support of allies, we never lost focus on a core principle at Twitter, which is we center the tweets most impacted in how we design responses. And that journey starts with deep listening. And here are just a few things that we launched in 2020 that we heard and then acted on for our tweet. So first, we heard tweets everywhere needed help adjusting to remote work. So we upped our benefits and reimbursements, recognizing that not everyone across all communities has easy access to the essentials of work from home, like reliable Wi-Fi and monitors and ergonomic equipment. We heard that parents were especially hard hit at the beginning. So we reconfigured our benefit offerings to cover increased child expenses, introduced flexible work schedules, and brought in experts to provide guidance and support to our Twitter parents. And then, of course, the most important for the context of the discussion is the work we did around xenophobia, racism, and white supremacy. A year ago, before all of this began, I couldn't imagine we would ever host a company-wide discussion about anti-Blackness, white supremacy, and the role that systemic racism can play in the workplace, how to spot it, and what we can all do to dismantle it. But it's what the year demanded. And so we launched programming that was unique to 2020, but we are continuing to fund and pull forward through the year because we see it driving direct progress on creating an inclusive workplace. During a year when we faced unprecedented struggles, our most marginalized communities were hurting 2 or 3 times over. And at Twitter, as employers, we saw it as our job to acknowledge and support those employees in ways that doubled down on our commitment to their success.
Yeah, well, and I think that's an important element, right? Is how do we maintain sort of that commitment? And Susan, maybe I'll ask you to maybe chime in on the same question, but maybe also talk about the way that we maybe help support, right? And maybe build awareness, if you will, for our leaders and our managers, and so how they can support diverse populations, even right with sort of this more virtual environment.
Yeah, no, Jesse, thanks for that. And James, I love everything that you did at Twitter. We did a lot of similar things here. So I think it's good to hear that we all sort of shared a similar approach. It means we probably got, some things right. What I would add to what James said is one of the things we committed to is continuing the learning, right? So beyond the session that we did where we talked about race, how do you continue the learning? And what we decided to do was to dissect that and get deeper on specific topics that we needed to sort of explore. And so, for example, we brought in Robin DiAngelo, and we talked about, her book, White Privilege. And where that allowed us to go is to this whole discussion around allyship, right? And I think, bringing our managers back together to continue the learning. So you sort of, in my mind, they had the 101 and trying to understand race issues in the US. Now, how can you help? Well, allyship is one, but help you understand what that really, really means, right? And as Robin so brilliantly said when she was here, it is not for someone else to decide that they're an ally to the Black community. It's for the Black community or the Hispanic community or the Asian community to say, okay, you are behaving and acting in a way that tells me you are truly an ally, and therefore I see you and accept you as an ally, right? And that was important because I think, a lot of times people want to put that label on, themselves. But I think Robin's teaching our managers that you don't get to decide if you're an ally. The people who need the allyship get to decide that based on your actual behaviors. Bringing in Tony Mayo from Harvard, who talked about the research that he does that showed two things in particular. One is that women of color are least likely to ask for help when they need it. We just kind of go at it, and Rome could be burning, stuff could be falling apart at home, but we're going to show up to work and we're going to deliver, and nobody's going to know. We're going to be crisp as a white shirt, and nobody's going to know, and we don't ask for help. And so if you know that as an organization, then you're looking for whatever signs you can look for, and you're proactive about figuring out where your employees need help. But also talking about bias in performance evaluations. So sort of trying to get to root cause issues and getting managers to think about how they might be making biased decisions as they're evaluating people, and challenging people to think about, when you sit down to write a PE and you're using certain words and terms to describe a Hispanic employee or a Black employee, think about what it is that you're putting on paper and how are you evaluating them? And are you evaluating them against a standard that they shouldn't be evaluated against? Do you have certain stereotypes in your head? We talk a lot about, when people say, you're articulate, and the expectation that you're not going to be because you're Black or Hispanic or Asian or Asian American, right? And so that's a stereotype, that's a bias that you've got in your brain, and you sort of have to check yourself if you find yourself looking back at your PEs and you've got that word tagged to everybody who's Black or brown. So I think getting to, breaking apart this big concept of systemic racism and trying to drill down and look at specific issues is very important, and is something that we're working on here. And look, we're not done, Jesse. We have a ton more to do, but we've started and we're committed to continuing that process.
Yeah, no, that's great. Alex, I'm going to ask you as well, but maybe one thing that I'll share with our audience too is we'd love to kind of hear maybe some of the great things that your companies are doing as well, right, to address some of these issues as well. But Alex, Cisco's been a longstanding partner, right, of HITEC for a long time. Tell us maybe some of the things that sort of, you've been able to incorporate, given kind of what's happened over the past year, to continue to sort of differentiate, right, your environment or your culture, et cetera.
Yeah, just a couple things. One, thank you, Jesse. One thing, and this is beautiful. I love all the social justice commitment that each company has here. So Cisco, let me start real quick. Cisco's purpose is to power an inclusive future for all. And we have this idea of a conscious culture, or building awareness around difference. And so that's kind of the overarching strategy and vision of Cisco. And then what Cisco did last year was really around the same things that we've heard, created a social justice commitment in 12 actions and beliefs that the company was going to put in place and then also implement over a 5-year period. And what we believe is that we wanted to have technology for good. And the most important part is we want to address this insecurity. So where people are harmful when they belonging based on their identity. And so that was one core element of our strategy. Now, let me give you a very tangible example. And I'm going to go back a little bit. In 2019, Chuck Robbins, our CEO, and Brian Stevenson, who's the executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative and also the founder, had a courageous conversation. So this is well before, some of the George Floyd's murder and such. And they had a courageous conversation around this idea of the power of proximity. And I happened to be, in the room at the moment he was talking, and this idea that if you are close to the problem, you'll be compelled to solve it. And when you're close to the problem, insights would emerge, understandings would emerge that leaders would take upon themselves and solve the problem. So that was the idea of corporate social responsibility. So a few weeks later, we had a leadership meeting. And you, Jesse, Maria Martinez. So she's been part of the HITEC 100 for the last few years.
We were having a corporate board, actually, here at McKesson. Exactly. And she, we were having a leadership team meeting. I happened to be her D&I person. And one leader in the back of the room said, "Hey, Alex, I want to take action. I want to do something tomorrow to drive inclusion." So I was like, you have to get proximate with your talent. So just like Brian Stevenson mentioned a few weeks later, in that room, in that moment, we looked around and Maria approved. Let's go ahead and let's get proximate to our talent that is maybe underrepresented and understand their experience. So we've been on an 18-month journey. And what we have found is that when leaders are vulnerable and transparent in these conversations with people that might be different than them, insights are emerging. Insights like exclusive culture, insights like lack of visibility to leaders, insights like around equity or fairness that leaders are taking upon themselves to take action. Because us as D&I experts, we can only do so much. There's only so many programs that we can roll out. It's got to be the leadership behavior. And so that when you tie that back into powering an inclusive future for all in a conscious culture where we're trying to build awareness, it's the leader's awareness. So I'll stop there, but you got me excited, Jesse. Yeah, no, we feel it. We love it. And so, Lusaida, so maybe we pivot there. Let's talk about how, we talk about accelerating inclusion, accelerating equity, right? How does that translate into accelerating talent, right? Especially with kind of today's environment. And, how have you thought about removing some of the barriers? You obviously put it very beautifully around removing these barriers, right, to give people opportunities. Tell us, how you think about this.
Well,
Go ahead, Alex.
You go ahead, please, Lucina.
No, you're on a roll, Alex. I want to hear.
So let me just make sure I'm not out of turn. Jesse, is that question for me or is that for someone else?
Yeah, let me start with Lusaida. Maybe we'll go back. Okay. We'll come back around.
Sorry about that.
No, not at all. I think what I'll say in terms of, I'm going to continue on where Alex was going, because getting proximate to your employees is really the way that you're going to see a difference. So, we do a lot to support our organization and our leaders. We have scorecards, there's metrics, we look at metrics, and especially in financial services, numbers are everything. And for a bank, numbers are everything. But it's also helping leaders understand the numbers are not everything when it comes to people, because there's people behind those numbers. So we want to increase our representation. We want to, make sure that we have the representation at senior levels across the organization. But we can't just focus on the numbers to do that. You have to get to know the people, and you have to understand what their challenges are, what their issues are. Sometimes it's just getting to know people and learning things about people. It's those relationships. And the other thing is, I was kind of chuckling, Alex, when you talked about the leader who's like, let's do it now. This, when we think about what's happened specifically in the US and the impact that slavery has had for the last 400 years, you don't just fix that overnight. And, I think the whole point about getting proximate, if you're close enough to, Alex, you put it way more, much more articulate than I am going to do it right now. But, the whole point about really understanding the problem, like it takes time to understand what the issues are. And so while I certainly appreciate when leaders in my organization want to jump in and fix it and do something, it's also balancing that it doesn't happen overnight. This is a long-term journey that we're all on. If it took us 400 years to get here, it's going to take us a long time to really get to the final end state that we all want to see.
Sure. Susan, James, I want to bring you into the conversation too, but I'm also going to share right with our audience that, please, provide any questions that you may have. We'll go into a Q&A session here momentarily. But while they do that, James, Susan, I would love to, maybe let's stick to that, right? How do you think about setting goals, measuring progress, right? And holding people accountable? What are your thoughts? Maybe I'll start with James, and then Susan, would love for you to chime in too.
It's such a great question. It's one that really animates me, because I think there is a common misperception that DEI work is sort of, these soft skills, very people-centered, very, qualitative, if you will. And it's with good reason, because a lot of that is in fact true. But we are also practitioners of a space that by its very definition needs to be guided by the same targets, metrics, accountability, that we drive everything else that's important across our businesses. Where I think companies are doing really well is there's a pretty established practice for setting targets, measures, accountability, and numbers around workforce representation. We know that because a lot of the DEI work is originated in the United States based on EEOC requirements, right? And so the numbers for diversity, I think there's a mature system in place. I think where, understandably so, a lot of companies might struggle more is when it comes to inclusion, because then you're really talking about what people feel is the squishy stuff, right? But at Twitter, we see that as equally foundational to the work. So because we know that employee culture and, importantly, inclusion happens in teams, and most importantly, your relationship with your manager, we knew that that's where we needed to focus. And so over the past year or so, we took a really good look at our employee engagement survey to develop a set of questions that together produce an inclusion score, not just for the company overall, but also for leaders and their teams. And then we looked at the data and the ranges. We set a threshold for anyone who manages people at Twitter. And then we bundled it with a bunch of behaviors that we want to drive across those people managers, because we know these behaviors are highly correlated with inclusion. And then we just gave it a fancy name. It's called the Inclusive Manager Badge. Just made that up. But if you go to Go Inclusive Manager Badge, it's one of your 4 required goals in Workday if you manage people. And then we said the Inclusive Manager Badge will require these things of you throughout the year. So to get your Inclusive Manager Badge at Twitter, not only do you have to meet that very specific Inclusive Manager score in the employee engagement survey, you also have to complete all of your IND trainings. And importantly, you have to have 100% completion rate across all of your teams and all of your direct reports for all of your IND trainings, and then engage with our BRGs and their programmings and events regularly throughout the year. And once we launched that, the response that we saw, the things we were hearing from parts of the organization that quite frankly, we had never heard from before, told us that we were getting towards the middle, the management middle, that we really needed to recruit to be part of this solution.
Yeah, thanks, James. Susan, you know, as you sort of think about, you know, some of what James shared, you know, what resonates and what would you add maybe to the way that Morgan Stanley's looking at this as well?
You know, the combination of what James and Lucida said, you know, numbers matter. I think if you're not measuring, you're missing something. Numbers can also lead you down a false path, and you can think that as long as kind of you got numbers on a page and you got goals that you're good. You know, I mentioned we stood up the Institute for Inclusion recently. We had a board meeting just a few weeks ago, and our board members reminded us that it's not just about representation, but it's also about how people feel in your organization. And I bet all of us on this call can attest to times, maybe even now, when we were the only person of color at in a group, in our organization, in a division, and yet we still felt like we belonged. We would have loved to have more company, more people who looked like us, but we still felt like we belonged. And I think companies have to think about what were the set of things that happened, because until we fix the bigger problem, Lucida talked about this, the pipeline, getting more folks of color into our firms, we're always going to have a math problem with fewer of us than we'd like. But that's not an excuse for not having people feel like they're part of the organization, and there are a set of behaviors that drive that. And if I think companies can think deeply about that, then we actually will find ways to keep people in place and grow them, even though they may be in small numbers, right? And I don't think anybody's totally figured it out, but I think it's something that we all need to be spending more and more time on.
Sure. Well, I know we're only down to just a couple minutes here left. I do have one question that has already surfaced that, Susan, you actually started to answer a bit of this, but I'd like to give Lucida and maybe Alex kind of the final thoughts here on this question. But the question is, what are companies doing to retain women and Latinx or underrepresented talent during COVID pandemic?
Sure, I'll start. One of the things that JP Morgan is doing that we're going to announce shortly in the next couple of weeks is that we have gone deep in our communities and supporting key communities across the organization. We identified a leader to run our Black strategy internally and externally a couple of years ago. We have someone running a strategy for women across the organization, internally and externally. So what that means is it's in support of our employees, but also connecting with women in the marketplace. How do we help, women be business owners? And in a few weeks, we're going to stand up and announce a leader to run a Latinx strategy internally and externally for the organization. By the end of the year, we'll have strategies for LGBT+, for veterans, people with disabilities, and 6 what we call vertical D&I strategies across the organization. So I think that's one of the ways that we're putting really targeted focus on these communities to help support them.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll break up the next question into 2 pieces here. Alex, maybe if you could give us kind of a 30-second, I know I'm pressing you for time here, but maybe 30 seconds around how, you would hold leaders accountable for fostering D&I.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse, and I'll get right into it quickly. So going back to Maria Martinez, I'm on her team helping her run a business transformation. And so I'm embedded in the business, paid for by the business. My team is set up in the business. And what we have is a strategy around hire, develop, and engage. And we have our focus areas where we have underrepresented groups. And our focus for Latinx and Hispanic Latino is very specific. How do we drive and create that pipeline of talent? How do we ensure that we're engaging with them from a proximity standpoint and understanding their experience at Cisco? How do we comp them related to the compensation and the fairness and equality around that? And then also around promotion parity. So we're looking at promotion parity as well related to how are the promotional systems as well as the decisions that we're making. And so we have this in a very simplistic strategy because, you know, in D&I, you can go down a lot of, it's broad, right? So we've been able to say, hey, these are the few things that we're going to focus on and get very deep in that discipline, whether hire, develop, and engage. Lastly, we have a similar situation as Lucia related to we call them employee resource groups. So for that Hispanic Latino employee resource groups, we have a strategy around how we want to engage with the community.
Yeah, James, one last question here. I know we're up on time, but maybe there's another question around tying compensation to goals. What are your thoughts there?
No, we love it. So at Twitter, we have a deep commitment to transparency and accountability. And I'll go quick because I know we're out of time. All tweets can access a real-time dashboard to see how their teams are doing against the IND goals that we've set. We publish quarterly updates publicly on our progress. And then this year, we not only introduced those new standards for managers, but we also announced that executive pay will be tied to our ability to meet our diversity goals. But when we think leaders, it's not just our executives. Our BRGs are led by incredible tweeps doing important work. And it's critically important to the company. And we recognize that we need to treat it like we treat everything else that's important at the company. So each BRG also has a strategic plan that aligns with the IND strategic plans, has accountability measures, and importantly, we acknowledge that the work of our BRG leaders is just as important to Twitter as every other part of the company. So last year, we took the step to introduce a formal compensation plan for all of our 63 BRG leaders because that work cannot be volunteer-led or just a side hustle.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank all of you for your passion, your energy, and your thought leadership in this. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation and look forward to having us stay connected through our HITEC familia, and I'll turn it back over to HITEC. Thanks, everybody.
We would like to thank our corporate partners for their continued support of HITEC and belief in our mission to provide a forum for the leadership development and advancement of technology executives in the Hispanic community. Thank you to our summit host sponsor, JPMorgan Chase & Co. Thank you to HITEC's platinum sponsors, Accenture, AWS, Bank of America, Capital One, Cisco, Google Cloud, KPMG, Microsoft, Twitter, and United Airlines. Thank you to our HITEC Gold partners, Apple, AT&T, BNY Mellon, Citi, Dell, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Johnson & Johnson, Liberty Mutual, Lockheed Martin, McKesson, Morgan Stanley, Nationwide, Northwestern Mutual, Oracle, PwC, P&G, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Trend Micro, and Wells Fargo. Thank you to the HITEC Silver partners, Freddie Mac, HP, IBM, SAP, Schneider Electric, Tech Systems, Travelers, and Visa. Thank you to our HITEC Bronze partners, Adobe, Amazon, Amdocs, Capgemini, Cardinal Health, Claro, Cognizant, Comerica Bank, DocuSign, Globant, Link America, NGI, Pinnacle Group, Pyramid, Reviture, Workday, and Worldwide Technologies. Once again, mil gracias to all our corporate partners. To kick off our summit closing session, please welcome back from JPMorgan Chase, Benny Gonzalez.
Hola familia, one more check-in. Benny Gonzalez, Executive Director at JP Morgan from Tampa, Florida. Hispano y Boricua. I hope you have enjoyed it, learned a ton, and made a bunch of new friends. I have a tremendous debt of gratitude for so many that made this possible. And to you for making it memorable by actively participating. You see, I had a dream that someday JP Morgan might be able to host one of these summits. But this dream pales in comparison to the industry giants, luminaries that dreamed HITEC into existence. There's a quote from Walt Disney: "Your dreams can come true if you have the courage to pursue them." So I leave you with a challenge. Bring back what you learned and apply it. Continue to push up and pull up. Leverage your networks. And let's get busy making the next set of dreams come true. Now with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jason and Lupe. They are the first graduates from JP Morgan of the Emerging Executive Program. Jason, take it away.
Thank you, Benny. I am Jason Rueda, and I'm a little shocked and taken back at how impactful these last few days have been. When we were planning the summit, I hoped that the sessions would go good, but quite honestly, they exceeded my every expectation. For me, the notable standouts were the fireside chat with Rosa Ramos-Kwok and Lori Beer, the conversation on AI/ML and quantum computing, Carla's session on energy, and the conversation on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But as I look back over the last few days of these amazing sessions and networking events, I'm overcome with how many different thoughts and feelings. First, I look to the leaders who presented over the last few days, taking their knowledge and learning from their selflessness to give back and share knowledge with those who want to learn. I look around and I feel proud of my culture and to work for a company that feels so important to empower so many diverse leaders to forge new paths in so many areas of technology. Along with that pride comes inspiration to take what I've learned and use it to drive further change in my own area. Finally, the last and largest feeling that I have is hope. Hope for the future, and perhaps a challenge to myself to be the change that I want to see in this world. And with that, it is my honor to hand it over to Lupe.
Thank you on behalf of JP Morgan Chase for joining today. I absolutely found all 3 days to be impactful and empowering, and it probably came at the right time for me. Most of you heard my personal journey. We were pretty intimate on that all-female event. I want to thank all the men who attended because you are our allies in this entire process. Some of the quotes that I took away that I think are super insightful. I'm going to quote a few from Lori Bear and Rosa. Only you can define your success, but obviously it takes advocates and it takes sponsorship. So please look for sponsors. You are in a big family here at HITEC. I have some great sponsors already on this call out there. Colleagues, thank you very much. Also, assume positive intent. I thought that was super impactful from Lori. I know we all have so many things going on in our day, so difficult right now with COVID, all of us on Zoom, even here. I know if we were there personally, we'd probably be shaking hands, exchanging hugs. But I want you to know here today, you should feel that presence from all of us here on the call right now. So again, thank you, HITEC, for my own personal journey. Thank you, JP Morgan Chase, for hosting this event. And with that, I'll pass it over to Accenture.
And now, a message from our next host sponsor, Accenture.
With a bang, energy and change came to every part of our universe. Seismic or small, it continues.
Change is all around us. Shaped by technology and human ingenuity. We can make it work for you and your business.
From Accenture, please welcome Tony Diaz, Managing Director, Technology, Client Delivery and Operations, Human Capital Management.
I love that video. So first off, thank you, HITEC. Thank you, JP Morgan Chase. Omar and HITEC, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak and close out the session today. And as Lupe said, it would be such an interesting dynamic if we were all together, right? Because at this point, we'd be kind of hugging in the background. There'd be, folks walking out of whatever conference room or room we were in. And instead, I guess I have some attention. So I do have 30 or 40 pages worth of notes to go through here. But no, I'm just kidding, only just 2 or 3 minutes. So again, thank you, Omar, for giving us an opportunity to speak here. Rosa, JP Morgan Chase, Benny, Jason, Lupe, all the JP Morgan folks who are here on the phone and who are out there. Thank you for being such great hosts. And, you know, as we've said over the years at HITEC, right, each summit builds upon another summit, right? And the bar just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. So, you know, at this point, I can't imagine how much higher we are at this point. So just really, really, you know, glad that we have the opportunity to come right after JP Morgan Chase and to follow that great momentum. So, so on behalf of Nelly Barrero and we are very excited and honored to host the next session, which is going to be the Leadership Summit on June the 10th. So it's 82 or so days away, not that I count it, but I did a little bit. So we're really excited, and we're going to have our Global Technology Officer, who has written and authored our technology vision for the last, you know, 10 plus years. For those of you who are HITEC, true HITECers, you know that when I was on the board, I presented that that vision, and I've had others come in. This year in June, we're going to actually have the author himself come in and talk. So we're really excited. Over the coming days and weeks, you'll see information to sign up, and also as the speakers come through, you'll see that come. But again, thank you so much for the opportunity. Accenture is super excited to host, and thank you very much.
And for some final remarks to close out our successful Spring Virtual Leadership Summit, please welcome back once again HITEC President Omar Duque.
Hello again, HITEC familia. And thank you, Tony. It's so great to have you back on the HITEC stage. Thank you for your continued support and leadership, and we look forward to the one-day Summer Leadership Forum with Accenture on Thursday, June 10th. What an amazing day today has been. I'm still in the process of recovering from the emotional but important session we had with Carla earlier today. And Carla, if you're still on with us here, thank you so much for your wisdom and for your vulnerability today. I know I needed it, and so many others did as well. Loving a quote from today from one of our participants who said, "This entire event has been a constellation of stars that will certainly help us all uplift our performance and skills, and help us all uplift our performance, spirits, and capabilities." You have no idea how much that sentiment uplifts our entire team, and we appreciate you so much. Thank you again to JP Morgan Chase for sponsoring the summit. And I, again, want to especially recognize by name all of the team members who made this event possible. Rosa Ramos-Kwak, Benny Gonzalez, Jennifer Arnau, Brendan Medina, Jesus Aromesa, Pedro Cunha, Hector Anapan Lavelle, Alex Gleason, Ovidio Ruiz, Luisa Casanella, Jason Rueda, Ann Savage, Hugo Ruiz, Geraldine Marin Zamora, Edward Bistrain, Jesus Isea, Victor Casas Hernandez, Athena Cordero, and Valeria Arce. Thank you so much. I hope that all of you have enjoyed these last 3 days as much as we've enjoyed hosting you. If you're new to HITEC, welcome again. We look forward to having you continue to engage with us. And if you're a HITEC veteran, I hope you've enjoyed reconnecting with friends and colleagues. Thank you for your commitment to our organization and our collective mission. As attendees, you'll be receiving a summit survey once we close today. Please take the time to complete the survey and tell us what you think. As we continue to adapt, your feedback is critical to us, and we want to continue to improve and progress. Thank you again for your support. Have a great weekend, and siempre adelante. See you next time.